Good morning, I'm Mike Graham and he's Mike Parry. You're listening to Extra Time. The two mics will keep you entertained throughout the night. We've been talking an awful lot about injuries in the first hour. I've got some great calls coming in on the NHS and how wrong it is and how it's not working. I've got a great answer for it. We'll keep taking the calls on that, of course, 08717 22 3344. But instead of that, and as well as that, Mike Porky Parry's got some great theories on all manner of things. He's going to talk about ice cream vans. He's going to talk about Everton signings and departures. He's going to talk about Manchester United and Liverpool as well. And we're going to throw in some of the coverage that there has been about the football involvement in World War I as well, because it was the 100th anniversary, of course, just recently. 08717 22 3344. You're listening to Extra Time with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. This is Talk Sports Extra Time. You know what to do. You can text us on 81089. You can email via the website talksport.com. And, of course, you can get in touch with us on social media at MikeParry8 and at IROMG. It's my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Parry to the studio once more for another 3-hour special. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Mike. Great to be here. Thank you very much indeed. I feel in sparkling form tonight. And I really do want the audience to hang on for the full 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because I've got some great information and great insight into life which will help them with their very existence between now and
you look a bit different, actually. You got new glasses.
No.
Something's different about you.
No, there's nothing different. Perhaps I radiate. I have new knowledge about all sorts of things.
Really?
I've been reading.
Because it's only been a couple of days since we were here. We did a summer special on Saturday night, which was very, very enjoyable, very well received, I think, as well. So it's almost incredible to think that you've managed to amass such a great deal of knowledge in such a short period of time.
Well, I am a study of life and life forces and the meaning of life and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And without without holding myself up for a fall, I found out things over the last 36 hours which I didn't know about life, and I want to impart those into both your head and those of our millions of listeners and help them live their lives better, because I feel better, and that's probably why you think I look different. I feel more radiant within myself, within me and without me, and I feel better equipped and more confident and able to face the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune as life delivers them to us.
So you managed to get a reference to a Shakespeare play in there and a reference to a Beatles song.
Well, there you go.
Very clever.
There you go.
Very clever. Now, you will, of course, know that we educated you a little bit on James Bond on Saturday night. Tonight, because of your expertise in the subject, we're going to give you a quiz on ancient civilizations.
Okay.
Which is going to be very, very exciting. I'm very much looking forward to that.
That's fine.
We're going to be talking to Tim Vickery later over in Brazil. He'll be able to tell us how things are settling down in Brazil. Since
I hope there won't be any reference to the Incas or the Aztecs in the ancient civilization
There might
quiz.
be. I can't say.
That'd be too easy for me if there are.
Well, at the moment, the quiz questions are currently being looked at by independent adjudicators to ensure that they are correct and that the answers are right, and that there can be no excuses and any kind of nonsense from you saying that the questions have been stitched up in some way to make you look stupid, because we wouldn't want to do that. Now, we're watching Manchester United Liverpool as we speak. I was amused to see that when we switched it on for you to watch a little bit earlier, you were complaining the picture wasn't very good.
Well, it wasn't.
I can reveal to you the reason that it wasn't very good was they just let off a load of fireworks, and so therefore there was smoke billowing across the stadium, and that's why it wasn't a very good picture. It wasn't that the picture wasn't any good, it was just that it was obscured by all the smoke.
I'm not sure about that. I think there's something dodgy with our monitor. I see we've got it on one of our internal...
The internal screens are on,
internal screen, the monitor, and that's okay. But there was something really dodgy about it. And, by the way...
Well, you know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. You're used to now watching football in HD, I bet.
Absolutely.
And I wonder whether this is not an HD screen.
I'm sure it's not HD, because what I'm looking at now looks like I'm watching football in the fog. It looks like it could be hailstones coming down across the screen. It looks grey and
as clear and crisp.
Misty. It is not as clear and crisp as the old 50-inch set that you get in your living room at home when you're sitting there with your feet up, a plate of pizza on the right-hand side, a glass of Pinot on the left.
Yes.
That's the sort of
that wouldn't be you anymore, because you're giving up drinking.
Well, that's true. It's more likely to be a glass of Vimto on the right and, or maybe on the left, the old pizza on the right. Limited amounts of pizza as well. Limited amounts of pizza.
Well, how many pizzas would you normally eat?
I normally eat a whole pizza during the course of a football match.
Oh, it depends on the size, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a large pizza, but I now cut that down to half a pizza.
Really?
And
how do you order half a pizza?
Well, you don't, but you put half it in the freezer for tomorrow or the day after. You see what I mean?
I see.
And I have half a half, each half.
Right. So half for the first half, and another half for the second half.
Exactly, that's right.
Must be a bit cold if you put it in the freezer.
No. Well, it freezes the next day. Do you know what?
I thought you said for the second half.
No. I have half of the pizza for the first half of the game, and the second half, which I've left in the oven, warming
Yeah.
for the second half of the game.
Oh, I see.
The other half of the mass pizza, because you see, I have.
So it's actually a quarter in the first half you're having.
A quarter in the first half and a quarter in the second half. The other half is in the freezer.
Yeah.
Now, what I do is, with my lodge pizza, I have one half of the pizza topped up with ham and pineapple and mushroom, and the other half is just plain pizza. Because the plain pizza reminds me of all those nights I used to leave you in a bar on 2nd Avenue, make my way home up 1st Avenue, where I lived, or between 1st Avenue and York, and always call into the local pizza shop and get 3 $1 slices of pizza, which were so delicious.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Neil Pizzas is incredible.
Unbelievable. And you didn't need anything else to eat then, you know, for 24 hours. It was wonderful.
I remember the story, a colleague of ours who first came to New York and was staying at a hotel told me once when he bought for the first time, he'd been to the bar all day, didn't really know what to have for dinner, and was staggering home, and went into one of those pizza shops and ordered a calzone. Which I don't know if you've ever had.
No.
But it's literally it's kind of like a Cornish pasty, but it's a pizza made up into a whole sort of pasty type shape. And he had no idea really what it was. And he took his shirt off, lay on the bed, as sometimes people do in the hotel, put this thing up, took a bite out of it, and all this burning oil spouted out of it. And he burned the hell out of his chest. He had to go to hospital.
No, you're joking. Who was that?
I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious me, how amazing is that? And, you know, he went on to become such a well-read and well-learned individual. Well, there you go. Now, listen, watching this Manchester United Liverpool game, okay?
Picture's just got a bit better. Maybe the smoke's clearing.
Yeah, maybe the smoke's clearing. And it's 1-0 Liverpool. Now, this is in Miami, yes?
It is.
Right. Loyal listeners to TalkSport who have been listening to me for years and who have the greatest respect for my ability to see...
They all do.
Not just over the garden hedge, but over the Pyrenees... will confirm, and you probably don't know this, but I mean, that's probably because you're not quite as in touch as millions of our listeners.
Well, I don't know what you're about to say, so
I'll
tell you when you've said it.
What I was about... you're just...
look how clear it is now.
Just the internal screen's clearing up a bit, it is. Yeah. Right, now, what's going to say...
So it's nothing to do with the HD, it's the smoke.
No, years ago, when the FA Cup final first hit a sort of a problem, and frankly, that problem was because they closed down the old Wembley, rebuilt new Wembley, that took about 5 or 6 years, moved to Cardiff, you know, how do we...
And the FA Cup in Cardiff was great, actually, I thought.
It was fine.
I went to a couple of the Cup finals.
Yeah, it was fine. But the point of my story is this.
What is it?
Why didn't we take it to Miami? Now, if you want to make the FA Cup final the world's biggest game, which it can be, it is the world's biggest domestic game. Remember
the
that,
FA Cup
Mike?
final?
Oh, by a mile.
Well, maybe it used to be.
What do you think? What do you think it is? The
Champions League
Cup
final. The Champions League final.
I said domestic.
Eh?
I said domestic.
Okay.
Do you know what domestic
we're all
means?
Europeans now. I include
domestic means inside this country.
No.
Yes, it does.
I talk about domestic now, including the European.
No, that's European, and international football's international. You've got international football, you've got European football, you've got domestic football.
What do you call football in China or South America?
Well, that's Chinese domestic football.
Chinese
or South American domestic football. I'm talking about English domestic football.
Okay.
Now, my theory then, and it holds now even more, because now it's come to pass, because I, as I said, can see over the Pyrenees, is that big football matches...
You're looking over the Pyrenees, you're looking into Spain, aren't you?
Yes, of course you are, yeah. Right. But I mean, they're very high mountain range. That's the point I'm making. You know that. Stop being obtuse.
I'm not.
Now, the point I'm making...
What is the point you're making?
Well, I don't know, because you keep interrupting.
Get there.
Right, here we go. Is that you could take the FA Cup final to Miami, you could make it the world's biggest domestic game, i.e. from
Arsenal versus Hull City. I'm sure you wouldn't be able to sell enough tickets for that.
Well, of course you would. Of course you would.
That's a ludicrous idea.
The Americans have all sorts
This is Manchester United, the biggest club in the world, against Liverpool, the second biggest club in the world, as far as English football
biggest
is
English
concerned.
club in the world. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I agree.
Certainly in the top 5 of world clubs, right?
Yes, I totally agree.
Arsenal and Hull City would not get a full stadium.
No, but then again, you put Plan B into operation.
Which is what?
You seed the FA Cup to make sure that the 2 FA Cup finalists are always going to come from the top half of the Premier League.
That takes away from the romance of it, which is what you're always going on
about.
No, it
doesn't take away from the romance at all.
Because you want Wigan in the final, you want Hull City in the final.
I don't. I've never said that. I've never said I wanted Wigan Hull in the final. I've always said that weakens the competition to have a team like Wigan Hull. Most of the time, over the last 20 years, the 2 teams contesting the FA Cup final have come from the top 4 of the Premier League.
Rubbish.
Most of the time they have. Don't you call me rubbish.
I'll get the...
You get the list of results, mate, and list of games.
It's abusive.
And well, I'm not getting abusive, but you
are.
The
last 2,
you're telling me I don't know my facts.
You just said most
I'm
of
telling
the
you you're
ones.
a juice head.
Well, I'm telling you that Wigan against Manchester City included a team that got relegated, and then last year it was Hull City versus Arsenal. And now only one of those teams was in the top 4.
And also Portsmouth have got there.
Yeah.
Fine. I said over the last 20 years, 95% of the time, the 2 teams contesting the FA Cup final have been from the top 4, and without exception, The winners, except for Wigan, have always come out of the top 4.
How about
okay?
Stoke? How about Wigan, like I've mentioned already? How about Southampton? We're in the final.
I've said 95% of the time, for goodness sake, man. If you get the,
You said
get the results
95%
of the last 20 years of the FA Cup
Oh,
finals,
now you're going
you'll
20 years.
You'll find I'm right.
Well, hang on. Here's the results from the last.
I'm not interested
Arsenal 3,
in those.
Hull City 2, Wigan
well, we know
Athletic
about that
1,
one.
Manchester City
We know about
0.
that one.
Manchester City 1, Stoke 0. Chelsea
We
1,
know about that
Portsmouth
one.
0. Chelsea 2, Everton 1.
But you're being
they
so
weren't in the top
selective.
4
You're
either.
being so
no,
selective.
This is the last
Bingo!
5 years.
You're being so selective
Oh,
about
here's a great
individuals.
one. 2007-8, Portsmouth 1, Cardiff City
Oh,
0.
why don't you pick a result out from,
Liverpool-
1898?
Liverpool 3,
Or
West Ham
1943.
United 3.
Who was in...
Bingo!
Come on.
Manchester United 3, Millwall 0.
Yeah.
That's the last 10 years.
Yeah,
I've just read them all out to you.
fine. But what I'm saying is at least one of the teams was in the top
Oh,
4.
at least one of them.
And it's usually...
You were saying 2.
And it's usually both.
You were
Bingo!
saying-
It's usually
It's
both of
never
them.
both. It's hardly
It
ever
is
been
usually
both.
both of them.
Absolute rubbish.
Why do you always do this? Why do you, your lack of
Well, these are called the
personality, your
facts.
lack of thinking power, you go and find a load of facts, and you know as well as I do,
Load of facts.
you can manipulate figures, numbers, and facts to your
Yeah.
own benefit any way you want. You've got to have a more breadth of thought, Mike, to be able to get onto my intellectual plane
I know.
and debate
I'm
these
very
issues.
sorry. All right, I apologise for introducing some facts into your argument.
You've
I'm
got to
terribly
debate
sorry.
these issues. You can't possibly just start, churning out facts to me and telling me that this is wrong and that's right. You've got to have some breadth and some depth to your ability to debate and argue with me. Okay?
I will have some breadth and my ability to debate will improve, I promise. Mike Porky Parry is here. I'm Mike Graham. We are the two Mikes. Loads more coming up next. This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. We've got lots to talk about. Manchester United have just equalised a rather well-taken goal by Wayne Rooney.
Oh.
They've just scored another goal.
2-1.
It's now 2-1.
Oh.
Juan Mata has scored a second goal for Manchester United. I'll tell you
Juan
what,
Mata.
Wayne Rooney's looking he's not Japanese,
No, it's his name, Juan Mata. Rooney's first goal, by the way, was a searing ball to the far side of the area. Rooney running in with his left foot, just stroked it back to the far post. But Skirtle really should have got in the way and didn't.
Yeah, he should have done. But Rooney's looking very fit, isn't he?
He's looking incredibly
given
slim.
what Louis van Gaal said about Luke Shaw not being fit enough
Louis
to play
van
for Manchester
Gaal.
United, he's obviously putting them through their paces.
And Rooney's got his hair cut really kind of weird. It's like kind of
Well, it's
short,
just very short.
on one bit, and then he's got like a quiff on the front.
Yeah.
But
Mata's shot took a little slight deflection, which I suppose didn't help the goalkeeper. But nevertheless,
Juan Mata.
2-1 to Manchester United.
Yeah,
now. 57 minutes gone.
That stadium's not full, by the way. Have you noticed?
It's not, no. So what chance have you got of filling up a stadium with two teams who are not in the top
Oh,
four?
well, come off. I'm talking about May. I mean, look, it's a great idea because what would happen is you would arrange all these millions of package holidays for the fans to get over there, enjoy Miami. The Miami Tourist Board would get involved. They'd get over to America. It would be a worldwide television extravaganza.
it's never going to happen, is it?
You'd raise more money than you would if you held it at
No, you
Wembley
wouldn't.
because of television rights worldwide.
That's
yes,
not
you
true.
would. You would. I'm telling you, it's a brilliant idea. But anyway, look, we don't talk about that anymore because you haven't grasped it.
Well,
Talking
let me
about
just give you the
grasping
final
things,
count. The final count.
The final count?
As
Do you think I'm interested in the final count?
The final count as the research
It's
department.
the final countdown.
It's going to be the final
What's the name
countdown
of that
for
group?
you. It was Europe, wasn't it?
Europe. That's
Yeah.
I think Europe or Europa or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Europe.
It's the final countdown. Diddle-doo-doo. I
It
remember
gets
that
played
record.
all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does,
It's
yeah.
overplayed. But
It does, yeah.
what I was going to say was a top four teams in the last 10 years in the FA Cup final, 11.
Yeah.
Top four teams in the non-top four teams, 11. So it's actually evenly split.
Yeah.
So it's not 95%.
You
Slightly out there.
manipulate all these figures just for your own
Slightly out
advantage.
there.
Anyway, talking about football teams
Yeah.
and the new season dawning, and now
It's
we're
very
looking at
much
this
upon us,
game
isn't it? Yeah.
in Miami.
Very
Now,
exciting.
just for the benefit
Very
of our
exciting.
millions of listeners, Mike,
Yeah.
could you tell us who you are going to allegedly be? What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at?
What? Because I've just seen.
Who
I've just seen a bit
are
of paper that you've got that written on.
Who are you
What do mean, who am I
allegedly going to be
I'm
supporting
support who I
this
always
season?
support. I support who I always support, which is Brentford, obviously.
What a rubbish. Because I took you to Brentford one night and they're playing Everton. You became
That's
a
not
Brentford
true. No,
fan.
that's not true. I explained to you why I was a Brentford fan.
Yeah.
Because my dad had taken me to a Brentford game when I was a young lad and had told me that Jackie Graham, who played for Brentford at that time, was a relation of ours.
What a
now, you, I seem
rubbish.
to remember, stunted up some guy to ring into the show to say that he was Jackie Graham and he wasn't, in fact, related to me at all.
I didn't stunt anything
All
off.
I know is that I was told that he was one of my relatives, and my father told me that. And now that my father has sadly passed away, I can't check with him whether or not that was true.
A relative of the Jackie Graham who did play for Brentford rang in to say, how dare you denigrate the name of his dear departed great uncle.
He just said he didn't think we were related.
Like, but anyway, you're going to support this season then? Brentford,
yeah.
Oh, how many times are you going to see him? Same number of times as last season?
Well, if I can get to go and see them, I will.
And how many times did you get to see him last season? You didn't get to see them because they're so far away, aren't they? You know, my team, Everton, are just only like 220 miles away, or 320 miles if I'm in my pad on the coast.
Yeah, but you don't have anybody else to hang about with, do you?
What do you mean?
You go to a game every weekend.
Rubbish. That's utter nonsense.
You know,
I've got responsibilities
I've got children to look after. I've got a dog to look after. I've got, I don't live anywhere near Brentford.
It's very convenient. You've got children and a dog to look after, isn't it? When you choose to. When you choose to.
Not when I choose to.
When you choose to.
That's what I need to do. And the championship season actually starts next Friday night. This Friday night coming.
And who are Brentford playing?
Brentford are playing Charlton on Saturday.
Are they?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because I'm a Brentford fan,
Somebody
so I know
just told you.
Nobody's told me.
Somebody's told you that.
Nobody's told me that.
You don't know that. You haven't got a clue.
Well, you can check it if you like.
What league are Brentford in?
What league? They're in the Championship. I just told you. They're in the Championship. They got promoted, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm sure you know what you're talking about. I don't think you do.
Who are Everton playing in the first game of the season?
Leicester away.
Are you going?
I am not going.
Really? Why not?
Well, at the moment I'm not going, but I may.
Are you waiting for a free ticket?
No, not at all. But
you're waiting to be invited to Leicester.
It's not this weekend. That's the Championship kick-off. It's the weekend after. No. It's a question of circumstances.
Is it?
Circumstances rule.
Well, Leicester's not very far away.
Leicester's actually a bit of my old stomping territory, because having gone to the University of the Trent, which is based in Nottingham, of course, you only have to go over the main sort of...
sort of East Midlands.
Yeah, that's right. I think you go across the A45 to
East
Leicester.
Midlands Airport, that, isn't it?
It's Nottingham, Derby and Leicester. No, that's nearer Derby, I think, East Midlands Airport. And,
I went to the East Midlands Airport once from Scotland. I was going to the Belfry.
The Belfry, yeah, that's right, yeah. Well,
you played golf at the Belfry?
I've played golf. No, I haven't, but I covered the Ryder Cup at the Belfry, didn't I? Yeah, that's right, I did.
What are you saying, didn't I? I don't know.
Well, I think I did.
I was there for the Ryder Cup as well, but I was there for like the last day of it, because then we got to play the course the next day. It was some kind of trip that was organised by some golf company. And you know what was amazing? Was when you play golf the day after one of those kind of tournaments, it's a completely different game, because the fairways are literally shaved, the rough is completely kind of manicured.
Yeah.
It's not like the course is normally.
Yeah. I got my phone confiscated at the Belfry.
Did you?
I was literally walking on the spectator side of the ropes, but too close to the rope, and I had my phone in my ear, but I was only listening to a message. I wasn't speaking. And the steward stopped me and said, "I'm seizing your phone." I said, "You can't. That's theft." No. They said, "We can." And they took it.
Did they?
Yeah, they took my phone, and you had to go and reclaim it from a tent.
I mean, technically you're allowed to have a phone, aren't you? But
No. There was
but you see people take pictures with phones all the time.
Well,
you must have been talking on it.
No, I wasn't talking on it. And in those days, believe me, nobody took pictures or anything. The phones were just like phones. Sort of phone was designed for to communicate with somebody else, not to be used as a camera, which they are now. Sometimes wonder why they bother having the speaking facility on the phone. But they took it off me. I mean, the point was, they said, well, unless you give it to us, I'm going to throw you off the course. So you can't throw me off the course, and I am. And
were
all
you
this
there
kind
for
of
Talk
stuff,
Sport?
Yeah, I was there for Talk Sport, yeah. And they took it, and I had to go and reclaim it that evening. But the funny thing was, when I went and reclaimed it, they searched through this box and they found it. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, those are the phones there. I said, oh, these are the ones we confiscated today. People have just gone home and left them.
Really?
Yeah, like dozens of phones.
How weird.
Yeah.
I had that situation the other day because I had to take my watch to get a new battery.
Oh, yes.
And I dropped it off at this place because I was going
I can very rarely find a jeweller's that replace a battery these days.
This was not a jeweller. This was one of these places that does keys and does shoe repairs.
Like a cheap joint.
Well, yeah, they do. Well, it wasn't that cheap, but they replace batteries. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And anyway, the thing was, I dropped it in there, and I was meeting a guy for some lunch.
Oh,
and unfortunately, lunch went on longer than I thought it was going to, and so by the time I finished the lunch,
you were intoxicated.
Well, no, it wasn't that. I just thought the place was going to be closed.
Yes.
So I wasn't able to go back for a couple of days, and I thought, because it's that kind of place, I wonder what they do with the watch.
Well, they've
and I hope they
sold it.
And I went back to get it, and the guy said, and he was joking. He said, "Oh yeah, you know that charity shop up the road?" He said, "No, we haven't really done that." But he opened this box. There's about 15 watches in there.
People haven't come back.
And he said, "Some of these I've had for 2 years."
Good God, were they any good?
Well, I didn't really look through them.
No.
I wasn't going to say, "Can you give me them and let me see."
How many watches have you got?
How many watches?
Yeah.
I've got one watch.
I've got about 30. What are you
Why?
at? I just have. Why
have you got 30 watches?
Because when I see a new watch and it's, oh look, hang on, what's going on here? I think Manchester United have scored again.
Do you?
They
it's 3-1.
have. And
Looks like Wayne Rooney
It looks
again.
like it's Rooney again. Now, why didn't you spot that, you see? You're supposed to be a trained observer. Yeah, well, I have
You're
to
the
say,
one that's looking at the internal screen.
I do have a magnetic effect on people, and good God, that was an amazing goal.
No, it wasn't.
Explain what happened.
No, somebody kicked the ball from a very long way away.
That's
the
right.
Goalkeeper went back and back and back. He hit the crossbar, bounced back out, and Wayne Rooney just tapped it in.
It didn't even hit the crossbar. It went out of play.
Yeah.
It hit the stanchion.
It's not a goal, then?
It's hit the stanchion. Well, it's been given. It's been given.
Shouldn't be a goal.
No, it shouldn't. Here, I'll just explain to our listeners. It's punted in from a good 35, 40 yards out on a high arcing ball.
It's like the goal that Rooney scored at West Ham, isn't it? Similar.
No, well, it's more like the Seaman goal against Brazil. You know what I mean? When he went backwards and backwards and backwards.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
But it does actually drop behind the
right. Just to explain this goal tonight, folks. It drops over the crossbar, hits the stanchion.
It's not a goal.
It comes back in, but then it comes back into play.
It's not been given. Look, it's gone back to 2-1.
Oh yeah, it's been ruled off. But it did say 3-1 for quite a long time. And then Rooney hit it with the outside of his right foot as it came out to him. And for a long time it was given.
Yeah.
Until they looked at the TV pictures to see exactly where the ball had gone. It had gone out of play. There you go. Cameras.
This is where they weren't listening to your running commentary there.
Well, that's right.
Said it was a goal.
That's right. But United look as though they're on top now at the moment.
Well, I'll tell you what they do look. They look a lot fitter than they looked last year already.
Yes,
so whatever
they do.
Van Gaal is doing, it's obviously working.
Van Gaal.
By the way, I found a
Dutch didn't go to save it because he realised it'd gone over the bar. What an idiot referee.
Bingo!
Sorry, yeah, go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I found a Dutch journalist who's going to come on and tell us at some point or other in the future precisely what the correct pronunciation of Van Gaal is.
Van Gaal.
Because some people are suggesting
Bingo!
that Ruud Gullit has got it wrong.
Exactly. Well, you see,
Some people are suggesting that.
Well, I know what I'm talking about because it depends which country you're in. Getting back to my watches.
Yeah.
Every time I see a black
got
watch
30
with a black
watches.
I've got about 30. Yeah. Now I've only got one decent one. I've got a Rolex, which every gentleman of my sort of. In my
Age.
position, no, my standing. I was going to say not my age.
Your standing?
Yeah.
What standing?
How's
What
that?
is your standing?
Well, I would say, a man with a sort
Bingo!
of a successful career. And what are you laughing at? What are you laughing at?
Because I don't think you have got a successful
Well, that's
career.
a bit harsh, isn't it? and a man of standing and eminence who, who
What sort of watch are you wearing tonight?
who can open doors. Well, this is
It looks like a Timex.
No,
it's not
a
even a
Timex.
leather strap.
No, hang on.
It looks like a plastic
Take my
strap.
glasses off, see what it says.
It looks like one of those luminous watches you get for your 8th birthday.
No, it says Pulsar, and I can tell you...
Pulsar?
I can tell you what is unique about this watch. It's made of...
Tin.
Titanium.
Is
Yeah,
it?
It's made of titanium. And as you can see, it's black with a black strap.
Yes.
And every time I pass the jewellers and I see a watch with a nice big black face and black strap, I
Yeah.
buy it. Because I love black watches.
Do you?
Yeah, I think they look very classy and all
You
that
can
kind
get a
of
tartan as well, the Black Watch tartan.
stuff. What?
The Black Watch tartan.
You
to
mean
go along with it.
the Army regiment?
Well, yeah.
The Black Watch?
Yeah, well, the Black Watch is named after the tartan. The tartan existed before the regiment, I think.
Well, what, is it a black tartan then?
No, it's not black, no, but it's
Why do you
called
call
the
it the Black Watch then?
Well, I don't know.
Well, you should know if you're going to make a point about, a regiment in the British Army, particularly on a day like today.
They're doing away with the regiment, actually,
When
as it
we're
happens.
commemorating, yeah, they are. I read that. When we're commemorating the 100 years since the start of the First World War, then you should know what you're talking
Funny you
about.
should say that, because we're going to be talking about that coming up next. Jeff Ellis is going to join us from the United States, who's a sports historian, believe it or
Excellent.
not, because there was an awful lot of teams, including Heart of Midlothian and the Orient, of course, who went out, and Portsmouth too,
Excellent.
sent their entire teams out to the fight in the First World War. We're going to talk about that coming up next on TalkSport.
Good.
They were summoned from the hillside, they were called in from the glen, and the country found them ready at the stirring call for men.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. We are the two Mikes, Mike Parry and Mike Graham. It won't have escaped most people's notice that it was the 100th anniversary of the outbreak of World War One at just a few hours ago, and at 10 o'clock last night in England and in Britain, of course,
Lights went out.
lights went out as a sort of commemorative thing
Absolutely.
to do, really, because it was a remarkable and in many ways terrible war. We heard on TalkSport a lot over the past day or so the involvement of a lot of football teams who went out,
Well, you
including
certainly
the Orient team went out there and inspired lots of others. Portsmouth sent a team out there.
I heard a
Heart of
tremendous...
Midlothian.
Absolutely, I heard a tremendous account from a man representing the Heart of Midlothian team. the losses are so graphic when you personalise them to individuals like that.
Yeah, absolutely right. And they've got a big monument to them in Edinburgh. We're going to talk to Jeff Ellis now, who we otherwise know as the co-host of NFL Rants and Raves, but he's also, it turns out, a sports historian. And a lot of American teams were very badly affected by the outbreak, because a lot of people don't actually recognise that the Americans took part in World War I, but of course they did. Jeff, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Michael, and a happy Remembrance Day of sorts to everyone there.
Yeah, absolutely right. I guess because we're from a European perspective, we didn't know too much about the Americans' involvement in World War I. When did it start, and how did it happen?
Well, I must say, we were rather late for the party, and much like yourselves and your fellow countrymen, because there's a body of water separating us from you guys and a body of water separating you guys from the continent, the feeling of anti-war involvement was so strong in the beginning that there was so much resistance. You know, we had just come off the American Civil War some 50 years prior, and the thought of being in war again was just horrible. And in our American Civil War, we had 600,000 people die. And so the thought of participating in a European conflict that did not directly involve America, it took us 2.5 years to be persuaded, where we finally lost some American lives on some of the ships that were sunk by the German U-boats and things, until we finally came alongside. We were providing munition support for about the first 18 months of the conflict. But once we finally got involved, it was not until I think it was about April of 1918, probably, that we got involved. It was the very tail end of the war.
Yeah, Jeff, the other issue here, of course, is that you've got to remember that the British Empire reached its peak in terms of its wealth and its influence around the world in 1912. So if you think that it was just 2 years after that when the First World War broke out, we weren't as desperately in need of assistance from our sister country America as we were when you got round to 1939-40, if you see what I mean. And therefore, the political will to get involved, you didn't have a Winston Churchill banging the drum on this side of the Atlantic saying, please, desperately, we need the help. We thought we could do it ourselves. So the Americans, in the end, actually, in my view, came in as a political favour to themselves rather than to the rest of Europe.
That's a fascinating perspective, Mr. Perry. It's good to speak with you. It's been much too long, and I think you're probably right. It wasn't necessary. It didn't seem to have our boys necessarily go there, but the munition support was obviously necessary, and it changed American industry. In my perspective, it set up the Great Depression because it created a false economic boom that could not be sustained. And then after the war, it was just a house of cards waiting to come down.
Right. Yeah. Now, we were talking earlier, Jeff, about the involvement of quite a lot of British football teams in one way or another, some of them sending entire teams of people, many of whom didn't come back at all. But apparently quite a few American sports teams were affected as well.
Well, it's interesting. Again, American sport was nothing. It was a shell of what it is today, in forms of popularity especially. There was the popular sports at the time. Boxing was very popular. And again, we had still not yet had the advent of radio in people's homes. So it was sports that were attended. Baseball games were attended in large numbers. And from a baseball perspective, I think that's probably the sport that took the brunt of it. I looked at some attendance figures, and you had somewhere in the neighborhood of 500, 600,000 a year attending baseball games. And then once the war starts, that number goes down to 300,000 attending. And we lost one of my very favorite players. I have a photo in my office. My son and I, about 10 years ago, went to Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. And I got a photo, an old photo, black and white replica of Christy Mathewson, one of my favorite old-time players who played for the New York Giants baseball team at the time. And he was called Sir Christy. And he was the gentleman's gentleman of baseball, and his career was cut short. He's still the all-time win leader in baseball, but again, baseball pitchers back then pitched every day or every other day. It's ridiculous the amount of what the body could put up with versus today's athletes where they pitch every 5 days. And Christy Mathewson, in training for World War I, got exposed to some gas as they were doing their gas drills and things like that, and ended up dying of tuberculosis as a result. We have several Hall of Famers: Grover Cleveland Alexander, Red Fiber, Judd Wilson, Harry Hellman, all served and basically had significant amounts of their careers taken away, and they still have records that still got them into the Hall of Fame.
Incredible stuff.
That's astonishing.
Jeff, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Jeff Ellis there. You know, I don't know about your family. My grandfather went to the First World War, and he never really talked about it. He faked his age. He was only 16, and he started to sign up because he didn't want to wait till he was 18. And he got put in charge of the horses, and so he was in the trenches, and he got some shrapnel wounds in his face. But he would never talk about it. It would literally it was quite spooky.
I never met my grandparents, remarkably, but my dad's dad, whose name was Richard Parry, apparently led a donkey troop. I know that sounds funny.
Does sound ridiculous,
ridiculous these days, but he did. He led a donkey troop in one of the battles. I've no idea which one it was. I've never met him. But, you know, I think you're right, Mark. I think people don't talk about it much because it was all so horrendous.
It was a very long time ago.
And the gas and all that kind of stuff.
I think I'm right in saying there's no veterans left now in this country.
No. The last one died 6 years ago.
I think 6 years ago, yeah. So it's good that they remember it. And,
of course it is,
you know, it's all over the front pages once again because of all the commemorations that took place yesterday.
I mean, everybody goes on about the Great War, you know, the war to end all wars. In fact, the absolute truth, historical truth, is that the Great War, which is supposed to be the war to end all wars, actually led to a worse war.
Yeah.
Because it was the settlement in 1918, the Versailles Treaty, which led to the rise of fascism in Germany because the punishment meted out to Germany was so severe, and the financial penalties were so tough that Germany lapsed into, you know, economic ruin. And from that arose the Third Reich and fascism. That led to an even bigger war.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, all the politicians got it wrong. But they always do.
They always do. We'll talk about some politicians later on in the show. Lots more to come. We are the two Mikes. He's Mike Parry. I'm Mike Graham. Lots more coming up. TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. Mike Parry is here. The Two Mikes podcast will, of course, be out on iTunes in a few hours' time. We did one on Saturday night. We did another one on Friday morning.
We certainly did.
There's a bit of a cacophony of Two Mikes podcast going on.
Cacophony, I like that.
Do you know that song, by the way? Have you heard that song before?
That song, was that some girl band?
Not exactly.
Okay.
It's a girl singer.
Oh, I know it was a girl singer. Yeah, who is it then?
It's a solo artist. She appeared at the Commonwealth Games closing ceremony last night.
Lulu.
Not Lulu, no, Kylie Minogue.
Oh, Kylie Minogue, yeah, of course, yeah, that's right, yeah. Well, Lulu did appear. How
did you not know that song?
Well, Lulu did appear. Anyway,
she did appear, yeah, but she didn't appear with a headdress on and in a leotard.
No, I thought she looked very sexy, old Kylie.
Kylie, yeah, she couldn't move because of the headdress. Did you watch the closing ceremony?
A bit of it.
Did you see the dancing tents?
No, I didn't see that. No.
Excellent.
I think Kylie Minogue is absolutely wonderful, but I also admire Lulu enormously. She's been around since she was 16.
Yeah, I know.
She was in a group called Lulu and the Lovers, right? Came down from Glasgow as a 16-year-old and has survived to this day, 50 years on.
Lulu's not a real name, of course, is it? It's McDonald, I think, isn't it?
Of course it's not her real name. I think when she was born, a little baby, her parents said, "Now then, what are we going to call the wee girl?" And the mum said, "Let's call her Lulu."
Well, why not?
What are you going to call her Lulu for? Ah, silly. Anyway, listen, mate, I want to tell you about the research I've been doing in psychology, because I want to help you. I want to help
psychology.
All those people behind the glass there. I want to help.
I don't think they need any help.
I want to help our millions of listeners, because guess what I've discovered? I have discovered cognitive dissonance. No, hang on, it's called cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance?
Yes. Cognitive dissonance.
You just discovered that, have you?
Well, yes, I've discovered it, but I've studied it over the weekend. It's brilliant. Now then, it helps...
What does it mean?
Well, I'm going to explain it to you.
Right.
It explains an awful lot of things.
In a nutshell?
No, you can't do it in a nutshell.
Okay.
You can't do it in a nutshell, because it explains so many things. For instance, right, if you and I went to a football match... But I went in the hospitality where tickets cost £150.
Right, because somebody had invited you.
Well, no. I mean, I go in a better seat, and basically you're with the rabble and
the bulk of TalkSport listeners is what you're talking about. That's who I'd be with.
No, not at all. And that's a £25
As
seat.
a man of the people,
right? And we come out the game afterwards.
Good luck, by the way, getting one for 25 quid as a Premier League game. Shows you how you're like a politician when they ask him how much is the cost of a bottle of milk. You don't know because you've never bought one.
No, don't be like that. And we come out the game, we meet afterwards for a drink in a hotel nearby.
Yeah.
and we say, what do you think of the game? And you say, I thought it was rubbish.
Right.
And I say, I thought it was brilliant. Now, the reason I say I thought it was brilliant is because I've had a fantastic experience.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
You know, I've had some food and some drink.
Probably
and
haven't seen the game at all.
a comfortable seat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you said, I think it was rubbish because it was very cold where you were. And
it was a bit wet.
No drink at half time and all that kind of stuff. And that's called cognitive dissonance, right?
it?
That's the way it goes.
Okay.
And
what, two people seeing the same thing in a different way?
Absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right. And it could relate to anything.
But presumably not because their circumstances are necessarily different, just because they've got a different view of the world.
Well, no, you see, if you go to a cinema, and I say, right, I've got myself, you know, one of these upper-class armchair seats up there, and you sit down near the front, so you've got you straining your neck to look at the film.
Why am I always in the cheap seat?
Well, it's only an example. It
seems to be running through your theory.
Well, it's the way our life has panned out, really, isn't it, if you think about it?
Okay.
Yeah. And then at the end, again, we come out, we go to a bar across the road, and I say, that fantastic
We always end up
film.
in a bar in your story.
We certainly do, yeah, for meditation purposes afterwards. And you say, I thought it was rubbish. That is cognitive dissonance.
Well, what if we're both sitting in the same seat, side by side, watching a film,
Well,
and we both have a completely different view of it?
Well, you couldn't really make a great comparison then.
Well, why not? Because then that would be where the real explanation would have to come in. Because you'd say, well, I didn't like the film for whatever reason. I would say I did like the film because lots of people will go and see, for example, a great movie like The Godfather, and not like it.
Well, yeah, but
not because they're sitting in a cheap seat.
Oh no, but if they've got a more expensive seat, they would like it more. Believe me, they'd like it more. Because
so is this theory all about how much money you've got?
No, well, not really. Here, I'll tell you another bit of cognitive dissonance. Right now, you're in a relationship. You've got 2 children. You live with the mother of your children.
Yeah.
Okay, all that kind of stuff. I, on the other hand, am single.
Yes.
Now you keep saying to me, you should do it. You should get yourself a wife. You should find yourself 2 children.
I don't know. All I say to you is
do.
I'm not surprised you haven't.
Yes, you do. And do you know why that is? That's because you want to drag me into your lifestyle to convince yourself that what you're doing is right and what I'm doing is wrong.
Well, first of all,
that is called cognitive dissonance.
Well, first of all, I've never...
Dissonance, that's right.
Dissonance.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I've never recommended that you should get married. All I've said is I've asked the question why you've never got married, and I'm very, very clear as to why not. I'm not suggesting for a minute that you should.
Let me read you the absolute definition of this theory,
Is there a theory? Is it by a particular philosopher or psychologist?
This is a combination of philosophies all put together for the overall picture. Right, now, it's not just marriage this happens to. You can probably easily call to mind an acquaintance who is constantly trying to persuade you to make exactly the same choices as him or her, whether you're planning a holiday, buying a new phone, a computer, or getting into a lifestyle relationship. Do you find
I don't give you advice, though.
Sorry?
I never give you advice on that kind of front. That's none of my business. I would never even deem to give you advice.
What? You do all the time.
I hardly ever give you advice.
Yes, you do. You try to, but I don't take notice of you because I think that your life has been such a shambolic car wreck or car crash of, just, I don't know. Look, trained observer, Mike.
Trained observer, they've scored another goal. Are you sure it's not going to be disallowed this time?
I don't know, it might be. No, that's...
Yeah, look, they're going to show it now, since you missed it the first time around.
The
reason, by the way, that you are supposedly watching this is because on the internal screen, which is available to you,
that's right,
which is in your line of sight, that's why you're watching it. I, however, don't have an internal screen in my line of sight. That's why we're relying on you.
Yeah, but when I'm trying to tell you about
like a good
cognitive
goal.
dissonance...
Who scored it? Is it Kagawa?
No, I don't think it's Kagawa. I think it's...
Nani?
I'm not sure. It looks more like Nani than Kagawa to me, does it? I'm not sure.
Did you see Louis van Gaal, by the way, is going to sell off about 100 million quid's worth of players?
It's Lingard.
Lingard.
Blimey. Yeah, okay. Louis van Gaal. Now then, so I've told you all about that.
Bingo!
Okay?
Well, you haven't actually, because I've got the research department here have just posted for me the correct definition of cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
And they say it's the excessive mental stress and discomfort experienced by an individual who holds 2 or more contradictory beliefs or ideals.
But I've just explained how all that happens in your head.
You haven't described contradictory beliefs or ideals. You've described 2 different experiences. Which is not the same thing at all.
No, not at all. Listen, there's another one, and I'm researching all this to make my life more complete.
Where are you getting this out of? The Beano or something?
You fool!
Is it Idiot's Guide to Psychology?
No, they're deep psychological texts which are put together by professors at universities and all this kind of stuff. And
So is there a new book out or something?
And no, I pore over these texts. When academics have something to say, they go into what's called academic publishing.
Right.
And they publish these papers and they're put in the university libraries, okay? And when they're posted in the university libraries, they're then available to the general public. And these are the ones that I read, okay?
Okay.
From top professors. Now, another one which...
I'm not sure you got that one right.
Yes, I have. Now, the other one, which it plays a huge part in everybody's life, is sound symbolism.
Oh, yeah.
Sound symbolism, okay?
So give us an example of that then.
Okay, I'll give you an example. Now, you think that your eye and your mind is drawn towards a product priced at £1.99 because it's cheaper than £2.
Yes, in the supermarket, for example.
Yes, that's right. And the figure 1 is a low figure, but 99 is a high figure.
Right.
Therefore, left-hand side of head sees 1, right-hand side of head sees 99, but put the two together, the 1 comes before the 99, therefore...
That's why they don't price things at £2.
That's why they don't price it. Now, that's what you think, okay? But that's not true. Do you know what it's all about?
What is it all about?
It's all about the amount of lip and mouth sync technique you need to say $1.99. Do you see what I mean?
No.
Because saying £2 is big, like, symbols to get out of your mouth. And
£2 is fewer syllables.
£2, yes, but
It's only
1.99.
2 syllables. 1.99 is 3 syllables.
No, 1.99.
Well, you don't say it like that.
No, 1.99.
Why do you say it like that?
Because you don't open your lips very much to say 1.99. Whereas
But why do you say it at all if you're just looking at it?
Sorry?
If you're just looking at it, why do you start mouthing it like some kind of demented fool?
No,
I mean, presumably the security man would come and go, "There's a man over here mumbling 1.99. Would you please remove him from the shop?"
No, you don't be ridiculous. Your brain is saying 1.99, and
Well,
that's,
if it's 25.99.
well, if it's 25.99, 25 is still a smaller figure than 99.
I've just got I've just got another
Right.
explanation of
Yeah.
what actually sound symbolism is. It says here, sound symbolism is about certain sounds conveying certain ideas. For
That's right.
example,
Yeah.
some words signifying speed. Fly, flee, flow, flicker, etc.
Yeah, I can
So
tell you
that's
all
sound
that.
symbolism. So it's a bit like, a sound that sounds like
Here,
what
listen,
you're doing.
Let me read you from this
Oh,
text.
run is like that, isn't it?
Sorry?
Run.
Run? I don't
Yeah.
know about run. Here, I'll read this to you. Now, beyond the obvious fact that a £1.99 product is slightly cheaper than a £2 product, the interesting psychological mechanism which is at play is that we have learnt to have a subconscious link between 99 prices and reductions, right? But the second point
It doesn't
is
work
that-
in a pound shop, does it?
Hang on, well, 99 does. 99 does.
They don't have
Now,
anything for 99 pence in a pound shop.
there's 99 shops, though, isn't there? There's
Is there?
99p shops, yeah.
I've never seen
Yeah,
one of
there's
those.
a 99p shop. Right. A second reason for this is that since prices are read from left to right, I've told you about that, okay, the low number, but...
Only in this country.
But hang on.
Not in every country.
But the
not in China.
Hang on. Well, we're not Chinese, are we?
Well, no, but sound symbolism presumably is a universal
Well, I'm just
idea.
getting to that now.
How does it work
Now-
in China?
Well, I don't know, but I'm going to tell you it works in this country. The third is the most interesting as it relates to sound symbolism. Studies with made-up words show that certain sounds, such as a made-up word like boober, or... hang on.
Has this been written by a maniac, some lunatic?
No, a word like boober, or another word like...
Boober.
Or maluma, right? Now, they're associated with large round... Hang on, listen.
Unbelievable.
With large round shapes, while other words like takiti, got it?
Yeah.
T-A-K...
Isn't that kind of Greek yogurt?
No, are associated with small shapes. Now, why is this? Well, the former words force us to open... Hang on. Force us to open our mouths wide and are found in words such as large, huge, and enormous.
What about cobblers?
No. And then you have to open your mouth. Now, the later words, takiti, involves stretching our lips only a short way to make a tiny gap and are found in words such as little, tiny, mini, petite, itsy bitsy, teeny weeny. So when you hear, for example...
Polka dot bikini.
Hang on. So when you hear, for example, 1.99, you're hearing tiny sounds. And those tiny
I
sounds
don't
reflect
really
back into
care
your
about
brain.
any of this.
So,
why is this of any use to anybody?
because it's going to help our listeners understand why
I
they're
don't think it-
motivated
no, I
to do
don't
the things
think-
they do in life.
I
Yes, it
don't
is.
think it actually means a thing, and there are many people who don't believe that sound symbolism actually is in any way a theory that actually stands up.
The other one
because
I-
it only works in certain languages, presumably.
The other one I can tell you about, which I've been studying over the weekend, is if you move into a quicker queue when you're in traffic, it never works. It will never, ever work.
What do you
You're
mean?
an absolute fool. Don't
Well, I
move
did it
into-
tonight actually on the way in,
Yeah, go on.
and it did work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it
Here.
did.
Right, here.
I was on the M25, right, and I was driving in an anti-clockwise direction towards what you would have suggested was the West Ham training ground, which you got wrong on Saturday night because it's not in Bexley Heath, it's in Chadwell Heath. Okay?
I know that. Oh,
you told me it was in Kent.
I didn't. Tell
Anyway,
you that.
if you know the M25, which I'm assuming you do,
of course,
just before the Dartford crossing, the last exit before the Dartford crossing is the A2.
That's right.
Which brings you into to the O2. Funnily enough.
Yes.
Now, there was a massive queue. It's a 4-lane section there. A massive queue on the left because everyone was going off to the A2, and I thought, blimey, well, I'm not sure if I should go that way if there's a massive problem. Maybe I'll just keep going. So I got out of that, and I went on to the next 2 lanes over, and it flowed much better towards the Dartford crossing. Then it suddenly seemed as though actually the queue was at the Dartford crossing, so I went back in, so that, and I saved myself about 15 minutes because everyone else was just sitting there, because people were changing lanes. So actually it worked very well.
Well, let me read you the official psychological theory, right?
Yeah.
The truth is, it's difficult to estimate accurately the average speed of a queue, particularly over long distance. In a traffic jam, drivers focus on the amount of time spent overtaking versus the amount of time spent being overtaken by others. But this method of measurement is misleading. It fails to take into account the fact that your speed is higher when you're overtaking than when you're being overtaken. A 100-yard stretch during which you're overtaking others is over in a flash, but a 100-yard stretch during which you are being overtaken drags
Why are you
on.
shouting?
So, again, I'm trying to emphasise the point.
Shouting?
Seemingly forever. How about that? See?
So what you're saying is you should just stay in the lane you're
Absolutely.
in, even if there's been an accident in it.
No, of course not. There's
Well,
been
that
an
doesn't
accident.
move at all, does it?
Well, yeah, but the accident could be 3.5 miles away. That's the point, isn't it?
So you're saying you shouldn't move?
Sorry?
You're saying you shouldn't move lanes?
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't, because eventually...
that's ridiculous.
No, the illusion that the other lane is quicker arises because your brain... Maybe your brain doesn't, but...
Well, I've just told you, I was in a lane, and I changed lanes, and it was quicker.
Hang on. Your brain incorrectly focuses on the relative time spent overtaking versus being overtaken, forgetting to factor in the distance covered in each period. Consequently, even if 2 lanes of traffic are moving at the same speed, a driver in either lane will spend almost half as long again being overtaken as overtaking others.
It's rubbish. 1, 2, it doesn't matter.
No, it does.
It makes no difference at all. By the way, Manchester United won by 3-1.
Right.
The game is now over. Thanks for noticing that. While you had the internal screen actually in your line of vision, once again, you didn't see they'd blown the final whistle.
I told our listeners about each goal as it went in.
Including the one that didn't count.
Well, I was the first to spot that it didn't. I was the first. While it was still a scoreline of 3-1, I spotted first of all. I said, that ball went out. I said, it went behind the crossbar and hit the stanchion. You hadn't spotted that. And 60 seconds later, the score was put back correctly to 2-1.
Quite right.
So stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
We're going to talk about some of the transfer targets and the transfer deals, including Jack Rodwell, of course, who's now gone away to Sunderland. He's not coming back to Everton by the looks of things. Mike Porky Parry is here. We've got lots more to do. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be giving him a quiz on ancient civilisations, of which he is an expert. I hope we're not going to hear any more of that psychological claptrap that you've been coming out with.
Yeah, I've been
because
helping,
it really is.
I've been helping
Those
the world.
3 things that you came out with are absolutely ridiculous. And
There weren't 3 things, there were 2.
Just the...
Cognitive dissonance and...
You've already forgotten. Sound symbolism.
Sound symbolism.
What was the overtaking theory about? What was that called?
That was...
Has it got a name?
Well, that was a bit of sound symbolism as well, I think.
Okay. Parry is off the chain, says this texter who doesn't give a name. He's such an idiot, it's actually awesome. I love him. I don't think that's come from a woman, though.
On DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM. Extra Time with Mike Graham on Talk Sport.
Good morning, I'm Mike Graham and he's Mike Parry. You're listening to Extra Time with the 2 mics, keeping you entertained throughout the night. Coming up in this hour, we're going to have a quiz on ancient civilisations, yet another expert topic for Mr. Mike Porky Parry, and we'll be looking at the transfer circus and finding out who's going where. Manchester United, of course, now clapping their fans and shaking hands with Liverpool. They won by 3-1. Not a bad start for Louis van Gaal. I don't think he's lost a game yet. And, of course, we'll keep taking your calls as well. 08717 223344. You're listening to Extra Time with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport.
They just look as though they're right back on the rails, don't they, Manchester United? You just said that they haven't... Is it 5 games now, I think?
I think it is,
5 out of 5.
They certainly look very, very much fitter than they did
I'm
under
not sure
David
if they
Moyes.
look fitter. They
They look leaner.
They look more active to me. They look like they're all more hungry for the ball. You know, when you've got a manager who's not quite sure of the game plan that he's instructed you to play, you don't really want the ball because you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing with it. It looks good. I agree. Listen,
That's true, actually. That's a very good point, because David Moyes actually, I think, created a situation where none of them wanted the ball, and
That's right.
the malaise just
That's
sort of
right.
spread, didn't it? I mean,
It
that's
is,
an
yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
psychological
Yeah.
effect that we
Yeah.
could talk about if you want.
Sorry, so you're just saying that I've actually happened upon a psychological phenomenon at Manchester United, and you actually approve of it?
Well, I'm saying that you may be onto something.
Unbelievable.
But I think it's just all about, it's as simple as motivation, isn't it? It's all about motivation. It's like when you go to work and you have a terrible job, or the person you're working for just gets you down all the time.
Yeah, or sometimes the person you're working with.
Or sometimes the person you're working with.
Yeah.
I've never had
Yeah.
that situation, obviously.
Oh, really?
No, I've always been very happy in my job. You
Yeah,
know, I've never
yeah.
complained.
I haven't
But I
always
have had
been happy.
situations when
Yeah,
I was at
yeah.
newspapers where people were trying to force you out, or politics were going on behind your back. I know you've never
Exactly.
experienced any of that. But, you can come, you find yourself walking leaden-footed into work, you find yourself waking up in the morning, dreading it, and I'm sure a lot of people have that situation. And all it sometimes needs is for a new boss to suddenly appear, and suddenly everything's different.
It's the world's a great place.
Yeah.
Now, listen, you were talking earlier about being on the M25 tonight.
I was.
Now, I was on the M25 very, very early on Sunday morning.
Uh-huh.
After we finished our special on Saturday night,
Yes.
right, I intended to go straight down to the coast.
Did you?
And guess what? You can't get through South London on a Saturday night. Didn't realise this.
Yeah.
I mean, the roads are so clogged.
I
it
found
was
that as
unbelievable.
well, actually. In East London, it was the same.
Well, in a place called Brixton
Yeah.
and Streatham, which are our listeners outside of London, those lucky enough not to have to live in London, will know. I'm not joking. I don't know what happens with the rule of law, but cars are double parked in the roads all the way down through South London. It's a huge party area.
Yeah.
There are restaurants around.
Well, at midnight, it's only just kicking off as well.
I mean, like some places I was passing hadn't even opened. They were
Yeah.
just opening up,
I
you
know.
know. And then
Well, it's interesting for me because normally
Yeah.
I'm coming in at that time, and very rarely on a Saturday night.
Sure.
So Friday night sometimes I've done it, but I've never seen anything like it. I don't drive very far. I was going to do the same as you and head off down into Sussex, but in fact I stayed in London because the number of people that I was staggered by, with the number of drunks staggering about getting onto Boris bikes, to
Unbelievable.
actually ride home on
Yeah.
the streets in darkness, drunk.
That's right, and then
No
some
breathalyzer
innocent
to get on a
motorists
bike.
then will be accused of being irresponsible because one of these drunks on a Boris bike has crashed over their bonnet with no lights on and all that. I totally agree. But anyway, look, the point of my story is, like you, by the time I got to sort of, even if I got to the M25, I thought, I've had enough of this.
Right.
And so I parked myself in London that night, left the car outside the old Porky Plaza,
Right.
and got up very early on Sunday morning, heading off down to the coast. I take up a bit of the M25 round to the A3, and on this bit of the M25, it was very, very early. I came, in the distance, you see like a strange phenomenon. You think, I wonder what that is. Sometimes it's a circus on the move or something like that. Sometimes a convoy of army lorries.
Hey, do you know what? Actually, I should mention this to you. Do you remember a long time ago we had a conversation about how they moved giraffes around and they put them in trains?
Yeah.
and,
The one hits its head on a bridge in South Africa.
In South Africa.
It was
and
terrible.
I immediately thought of you because they were transporting this giraffe
They were.
on a truck.
They were.
And its neck was sticking up, obviously, above the height of the truck.
Yeah.
And it whacked its head into a
It's
bridge.
terrible. There
Shocking.
were two giraffes on the back of it. The other one survived, but that was terrible, absolutely terrible. Anyway, so you see all these phenomena on motorways. Motorways are interesting places. You see all sorts of vehicles. Sometimes I love to see the army on the move. All the lights on the lorries, those big green lorries they have, and all that means we're active.
Convoy,
and all that
it's
kind of stuff. Convoy, and we got ourselves.
I once drove in
convoy.
an army convoy.
Did you?
Yeah, when I was in Bosnia, because I had
Oh,
to
in Bosnia, okay,
get from the town up to the mountain
Right,
side where the war was going on. They said, well, you can't go on your own.
Yeah.
You'd have to drive with a convoy.
So you're embedded.
I was in. Well, no, I wasn't quite embedded,
Yeah.
but I was in a convoy with all of these amazing, Jeeps and
Yeah.
Land Rovers and things.
I got a colleague once who boasted about in print. He was in it was Afghanistan, right? And he was behind the lines there, and he boasted about being in a Mujahideen lorry heading towards the Russian front and all that kind of stuff, with a Kalashnikov across his knee.
Or even a
And
Kalashnikov.
that led to, journalists then becoming targets for the whole of the Russian Empire. But, a complete idiot, and he had to be taken out because he'd caused so much trouble and all that. Anyway, that's the story. So anyway, I'm going around the M25, beautiful morning, lights coming up and all that, and I see a convoy of sort of vehicles in front of me. I think, what is that? And guess what it was?
What was it?
It was a convoy of ice cream vans.
Really?
It was a convoy of ice cream vans, about 8 of them, and they weren't old
Mr.
knackered.
Whippy, was it?
Well, no, they weren't actually. They were decorated very nicely, and they weren't old knackered ice cream vans, because the only vans I ever see sometimes are these, like 25-year-old vans and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't believe it. They all had number 14 registrations.
Uh-huh.
Now, that means they're brand new.
Yeah, it does.
So that means there's a revival.
Must be a chain.
Well, it had a name on it, and I wrote the name down, but I've lost it somewhere. It was Herbert somebody or something like that. Yeah.
The reason I'm laughing is because of the great pains you're going through to try and remember where you've left a bit of paper.
Exactly, yeah. But the point of my story is that when I looked up where these vans come from, they're all manufactured in Crewe in Cheshire.
Are they?
Now,
what make are they then?
Well, I can't remember.
I can't remember the make.
Yeah, I wrote it all down, and I don't know what I've put
What have you done with it?
It's in my research documents.
Is it?
But I don't know what I've done with my research documents.
Yeah.
Maybe
he has
file
actually
here.
got a folder here.
Yeah. But anyway, look, I'll find out the name of it in a minute. I'll find out the name of it. But anyway, it's a great success story because when I looked them up, they turn out to be the biggest manufacturer of ice cream vans in the world. They're based in Crewe in Cheshire. What else is based in Crewe in Cheshire in terms of manufacturing?
It's a big railway place, wasn't it?
But bigger and more prestigious than that.
Rolls-Royce.
Rolls-Royce, thank you very much indeed. So Rolls-Royce is one factory in Crewe, the other factory is the ice cream vans they make there, and now they're
Rolls-Royce ice cream vans.
Well, you know, they are the Rolls-Royce of ice cream vans, that's true. And they're flogging them all over the world. But I thought it was great because I love ice cream vans, don't you? Don't you think that one thing that's always been with us since our childhood...
I'm not a big fan of ice cream vans. Funnily enough, there's one that comes down my street in the summer every single night, and I've got a feeling that it's because it's the mate of a guy that lives opposite me.
Right.
Because it always stops outside his house, and he always comes out and buys his kid an ice cream every night, without fail, in the summer.
Well, that's because the guy knows he's got a customer, so of course he's going to come down the street, isn't he?
It's because he knows that... Why doesn't he stop further up the street so he gets more people that he might not have otherwise got?
Well, I don't know the geography of your street, and, you know, knowing some of the places you lived in the past, I don't want to.
It's the longest street in London, actually.
What is?
The street that I live in.
What's it called?
I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell people where I live, am I?
Well, it's not the longest street in London. You feel the longest street in London is probably Oxford Street.
No, it's not, actually.
What is it then?
Well, I'm not going to tell you the name of the street.
It can't be the longest street in London. That's a load of nonsense, honestly. What a load of gobbledygook.
It is. Ask any taxi driver.
Anyway, it's not Jamaica Road, is it?
Jamaica Road's not a street.
Well, it's a road.
A road is not a street.
It is.
When I say the longest street in London, it means that it's got a street name as part of the title.
I see.
You see what I mean?
Right, okay. Well, anyway, look, the point is,
I
don't know why you don't like ice cream vans. I love them because...
I don't like the noise they make.
This country has changed so dramatically over the last 40 years in all sorts of ways. Pubs closing down all over the place. Greenbelt turning into housing, you know what I mean?
Well, you're responsible for some of that, aren't you?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Motorways cropping up all over the place. So we're losing a lot of what was our innocent childhood of our country,
Well,
right?
some of that's good, though, isn't it?
Some of it is, but not all of it. Now, one of the innocent childhoods of our country was the ice cream van. And I love the music to start off with. The jingling music, to me, always reminded me of summer holidays and rushing up the road and getting the sixpence out of your pocket and going and getting a traffic light. Remember the traffic light...
yeah, it was a Zoom, wasn't it?
Ice lolly?
Called a Zoom?
No, it's traffic light, because it was red, green and yellow or something.
It wasn't actually called a traffic light, was it?
It was called a traffic light, yeah.
Well, it was before my time.
Or I used to, I love the old 99ers, no problem, but I also used to love getting an oblong rectangular block of ice cream. You took the wrapper off. Oh, look at it. This is it. Brilliant. And putting it into a cornet. But you can't get the cornet these days.
Yeah, you can.
And also 2 wafers put either side of your rectangular block of ice cream. Remember that? Lovely, you can't get it anymore.
It was called a wafer, I think, wasn't it?
Called a wafer, absolutely. Loved it. Yeah, this is great. See, that brings back so many memories to me, this music.
Your eyes are starting to go funny.
So glad
swivel around in your head again.
Our engineers are so good at finding these things. But no, you see what I mean? So I'm all for it. And when I go down on the coast, when I get down to the Solent, and I'm walking along the Solent, I stop for an ice cream about every 3 miles.
And what do you get now, then?
I get a Whippy, Mr. Whippy.
Mr. Whippy? You have 3 of them in a day?
I might have, yeah.
That's not very good for your heart, is it?
Well, it's the only thing I eat to keep the energy factors up when I'm walking. You see what I mean?
A sugar rush.
So, well, that's not even a sugar rush.
Do you get a flake in it as well?
Yeah, to get a flake in it, yeah. And I have to say, I do like them. So I'm delighted. You know, I'm just telling you about the rebirth of the ice cream industry.
I don't
it's a great
think they've
thing.
ever got away. Let me read you a couple of tweets that we've had.
Okay.
This one to IROMG and at TS Extra Time from James. It says, no woman would ever marry Porky because he's too self-obsessed and the topic of conversation is always himself.
What?
I think that's true.
That's because people are interested in what I've got to say.
David in Essex says, I think this is a guy
David Essex?
David in Essex.
Oh, David in
Not
Essex.
David Essex.
Okay.
Mike, newsflash, the great big Brazilian banana mystery has been solved. The reason why they have no bananas in Brazil is because the 7.5 million tons of bananas they grew last year were stolen by a monkey with a machine gun. He's obviously a long-time
I
listener
see.
to this.
This guy's taking a mickey out of me, obviously.
Yeah, he is. Because
Yes.
if you remember on Saturday night, we
Yeah.
were talking about Brazil, and we'll be talking to Tim Vickery about Brazil a little bit later on.
Right.
And you claimed that they didn't have any bananas growing in Brazil.
Well, in that
Turns
part
out
of
not
Brazil.
to be true.
No, in that part of Brazil. That
Right.
was all. That was all I was saying. They don't grow bananas in the Amazon. Because if they did, they wouldn't be able to farm them because it's too big and too remote.
Are you sure about that?
They have banana farms elsewhere, but not in that part of the Amazon. That's all I was saying.
Well, as long as you know
Not in the
that.
Amazon basin.
Now, coming up, I've got a very frightening story for you.
Oh, yes.
Which we're going to talk about next. And
Right.
it's all about, what I'm going to say is it's about a funeral home. And I know how much
we
you
have
don't
to?
like those. We're going to talk about
Do we have
funeral
to?
homes. Coming up next on TalkSport.
Talk Sport. On air, online and on TV at Freeview Channel 723.
Poor old Porky Parry here sitting, breaking out into a cold sweat because of his fear of funeral homes.
Yeah.
I've never known somebody to have a fear of such a
Well,
weird
you
thing.
would if you drove past the one I have to drive past every morning and night. And
By the way, I've got a tweet here from Ogre Man who says, I wonder how many people just Googled what is the longest street in London. But, well, they'll find that they'll know the answer to that once they do.
And then they've got you. Then they've located you. Have people knocking on your door to give you abuse.
Yeah, no doubt. Because I get lots of abuse on Twitter, as I'm sure you do. But this is a story to...
No, I don't get abuse.
You don't get abuse on Twitter?
No, I don't get abuse.
Well, you should.
No, I don't.
I bet you should. Or you do.
Well, I don't because I have a very reasonable relationship with the people with whom I communicate.
Is that right?
Believe me, yeah.
Okay, well, maybe I'll give you some abuse to keep you in practice. Now, here's a story that I spotted in the paper the other day, Telegraph, actually. Funeral directors a little too close to home. Now, this is a story about some pensioners, right, in Malden, in Essex, who are upset because the building across the road from their retirement home is to be turned into a funeral.
Used to be a chiropodist,
parlour.
apparently.
Yeah, it used to be just a doctor's office, didn't it? And they think that it's a bit unfortunate because basically, I suppose if you are in the sort of twilight of your years, you don't want to be looking out the window at a funeral home because it might sort of upset you.
I think funeral homes and undertakes and all that, I think they should be like betting shops were in the 1950s. I think they should be anonymous.
But they
I don't
can't
think they should be allowed. Yeah, I do. I mean, the place I'm talking about, right, Mike, I drive past it. It doesn't matter whether it's day or night. 24 hours a day, these arc lights in the
You're always
front
talking
office.
about this, but your obsession with it is slightly worrying.
No, it's not, because I know that there's dead bodies behind the glass.
But if you were that upset about it, why would you get driving past it? Just go a different way.
I can't go a different way. I'd have to go on a massive big detour. But anyway, that's not the point. What I'm saying is that's just the front office, okay? Now, when I used to, I used to walk that route sometimes, and I gave up because I couldn't stand the vibes I was getting from this place. It's also got a chapel of rest on the block next door, and then it's a third block away in the other direction is a garage where all the hearses are parked. And which sometimes, if I'm going home at 2 or 3 in the morning, that's where I see the ambulances arrive from local hospitals.
They have to bring the dead in from somewhere, don't they?
Well, exactly what I'm saying. And okay, but it's within a residential area.
Well, where else are they supposed to be?
Well, you should put them on industrial estates that are empty at night. If there's...
Well, yeah, but then people who have to come and see the funeral arrangements and all of that, that's a bit impersonal for them, isn't it?
It's
Don't
not.
They want to feel it's part of the community.
No, of course they don't. What about the bloke who lives opposite, who's seeing all these bodies being carted into, the funeral home every night at 3 o'clock in the morning? Because, when people have got a problem, they die at about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, but most people are not as upset about it as you would be.
Well,
I don't think I would care if there was a funeral home opposite me.
Well, you're joking.
I wouldn't care.
Of course you would.
Why would I?
Because you've got, the spirit of the dead about you. And that is worrying, isn't it? Surely it's worrying.
No, not for people who are not superstitious.
I'm not superstitious. In fact...
You just worry about the spirit of the dead.
Well...
What do you think the spirit of the dead is, then?
Well, the spirit of the dead is... because I'm religious, I realise that once the human body has failed... Expired, there is a spirit there.
Is there?
Of course there is.
How long for?
Well, this is what we don't know. We don't know whether the spirit's still around for an hour or two after the actual body's expired. Well, I don't know, Mike, and it's no good making a joke of it, because I can't answer the question. What I'm saying is...
I feel like I've been transported back to the 16th century.
No, the spirit of the body has to leave the dead body, has to leave the cadaver, so to speak, right?
Cadaver?
Yeah, and go somewhere else.
Why?
Because it does.
Well, where does it go?
Well, we don't know, because nobody's ever come back.
We don't know if it exists, either.
Well, I believe that it does.
Well,
you have to have a belief in
well,
it.
you can believe it. If you want.
See, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Mike. And I've done a bit of deep thinking on this. I'm not sure there is actually a heaven up there and a hell down there.
You're not sure?
I'm not sure.
Right.
What I am sure...
What do you think there is then?
What I am sure is that your bodily form on this earth is only part of a massive journey, probably a tiny part...
Do you believe in reincarnation then?
No, I believe you move on to something else.
Where?
Well, I don't know, the Garden of Eden, or,
Where's that then?
I don't know, do I? No good ask me daft questions like that, because I don't know, because nobody knows. What I'm saying is...
What about purgatory?
Purgatory?
Yeah. Do you not know about purgatory?
I know what purgatory is, but I mean...
This is purgatory to me, this is.
Well, anyway, look, the point I'm trying to make is... Well, you don't have to listen, if you've got something better to do. The point I'm trying to make is...
I would be doing it.
That I have spoken to people who have been near to loved ones when the loved one has expired.
Yes.
And they have seen like a fizzing noise in the room, like a swish and like a...
Was that somebody opening a bottle of lemonade?
No. Well, yeah, a bit like that. Or almost like a sort of a firework sort of fizzing around and then disappearing. And even one of them, lady whose husband died, told me that it was like a blue light, which sort of, fizzed around in the room and then shot out the window.
Well, I think people believe that and they see what they want to see.
So what I'm saying is that if that's the case, and if the spirit leaves the body when the body is expired, if you live opposite one of these, like undertaken places, particularly the Chapel of Rest and all that,
It's not something a poltergeist this you're describing.
Well, maybe Poltergeist was built on actual cases. And what I'm saying is,
it was a fictitious movie.
Supposing the spirit is fizzing around and boom, suddenly comes through your bedroom window or something like that, which
that
may
might
happen.
be a good thing.
Well, it may be a good thing, but we don't know, do we? We don't know.
Yeah, but you don't live near one of these, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Here's a question I've always wanted to know, which I've never ever got a satisfactory answer, and I've asked it several times on this very show, is when you get cremated, right?
Yep.
Or when somebody that you know who's going to get cremated, you buy the coffin, because, obviously the coffin is one of the most expensive things that people have to buy.
And that's part of the burial... the funeral service.
The funeral service, yeah. But when the coffin disappears through the curtains into the fire... Do they take the body out of the coffin, or do they burn it with the coffin?
No, the whole thing is burnt up.
Are you sure?
Well, unless there's some racket going on.
Well, I think there is.
Well, you suggest there's a couple of guys behind the curtains there who suddenly take the lid off.
Yeah, because if that's the case...
And take the, the stiff corpse out of the... And then chuck that into a fire and save the coffin.
Well, no, because...
that's a terrible thing to say.
No, it's not.
That is casting terrible aspersions on the funeral industry, which is a very dignified industry, by the way. I'm not having a go at them, and if there's any funeral undertakers listening, a mate of mine, actually, his father's an undertaker in Blackpool, and so I'm honestly not questioning the dignity with which you treat, the dear departed.
Well, I'm just wondering, because in that case, the ashes that you get given afterwards are made up of the wood as well, then.
Of course they are, yeah.
That's not really very good, is it?
Well, I'm not sure how else you could do it. What else? I mean, unless it had a false, unless the coffin had like a false bottom and you just pulled it like a magician's box and the body dropped out. Well, no, I mean, that's what you're sort of suggesting. What do you
turn it into a show.
Well, actually, don't you remember the start of a James Bond film, Live and Let Die, where...
That was the one with the voodoo stuff, wasn't it?
That's right. And the CIA guy is leaning against a barrier...
That's right.
...in New Orleans...
But that's because they were using that ghoul to frighten people.
Yeah, that's right. And this funeral service comes round the corner, there's a weeping widow and all that. And then he's just leaning on this post, having a cigarette, and a guy comes up, very evil-looking guy comes up, and the CIA guy says, funeral, hey, who's dead? And the guy says, you are, and then stabs him.
Yeah.
Guy
Does he not say whose funeral is it? He says yours.
That's right, yeah, something like that,
Like that.
And you see, you've always got to amend me on these sort of things, haven't you? Always got to try and amend me.
No, it just comes to me, and I realise that, accuracy is important. If you're a journalist, you want to get it right.
And anyway, you know what happens then? The guys carrying the coffin walk over, put the coffin down on top of the body of the CIA man, and then you hear this clicking noise, and they lift the coffin up, and the body is in the coffin.
Yeah.
So, it's not that far-fetched after all, is it?
No, because it took place in a fictional movie, therefore it must be happening all over the place.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, clearly the stunt people of that film managed to build a coffin that you can, just whip a body into and drop it out again.
When you make a film, you don't have to prove that anything's happened, because,
I think they would have done for authenticity. But anyway, look, what we're saying here is that I personally would find it unsettling to live across the road from a funeral parlour, and I feel sorry for these people in, where is it, Malden?
Malden in Essex.
In
yeah.
Essex.
Well, it's worse than that in some places, though. In Scotland, for example,
Yeah.
where my son was born in Glasgow Infirmary, Glasgow Royal Infirmary.
Right.
Some of the windows actually back out onto one of the biggest graveyards in Europe.
Right.
So if you're sitting there kind of recovering from an operation, your view is of a graveyard. That's not very healthy either, is it?
You see, I don't think graveyards are a problem because the spirit's gone by then. By the time, somebody's been buried for hundreds of years.
Do you know, I've just been told that one of the people behind the glass, Andrea,
Right.
Lives opposite a funeral home. She doesn't look worried by it.
You
You won't be able to talk to her now, will you?
Well, when Andrea wants to take a friend home, does the friend never actually say, oh, thanks very much indeed, but and I won't have that cup of coffee, thank you very much, and then see them sprinting off down the road?
Very worrying.
Because I wouldn't want to go
Now, something else I want to bring up with you. You were going on about posties on Saturday night
Yep.
and how great they are.
Yep.
And as a result of it, you said that you'd posted a couple of birthday cards to your nephews.
Yes.
Well, I'm wondering if you brought me a birthday card, because my birthday's soon. I probably won't see you before my birthday takes place.
Your birthday's on Saturday?
It is.
Well, why would I bring you a birthday card for today?
Well, because you won't be able to post it to me, will you? Because there won't be enough time for me to get it.
I've made arrangements.
Have you?
I've made arrangements to
Have you been in touch
recognise-
with the place I'm going?
I can't tell you what arrangements I made. I've made arrangements to make sure that I do recognise.
That's very
this
kind of you.
landmark birthday.
That'll be the first
of
time
yours.
you've ever done that.
And it ain't 50th, is it? Because we've had
No,
your
it's more
50th.
than 50th.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
exactly.
lie about my age. I've got no problem with people knowing how old I am.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I just don't want to know what street I live in.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't want you to know what street I live in. That's the main reason.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to know. What
Now,
street
coming
you're
up, I've
Right.
got to tell you, the most exciting point of the evening for many people, certainly for me, is quiz time.
Okay.
Porky Parry, you did say on Saturday night that you were an expert in ancient civilizations.
I didn't say that, actually.
Yes, you did.
No, I
You
didn't.
know what I'm going to start doing? What I'm going to start doing is just making sure that every time you say I'm an expert in something, that they record it.
Well,
and we put it
all
together.
all the people
for a-
who are here on Saturday night are all there now. You tell them to get that quote out, because I can tell you I never said I'm an expert in ancient civilizations.
Well, let's ask the people who are
and
listening.
as a result, I've had to do a bit of studying on ancient civilizations because I knew you were going to make another attempt to try and show me up as some sort of blathering idiot.
Really?
When you choose a subject which you think I'm an expert on, which I'm not necessarily, but I'm widely read. I'm widely read, and therefore I will be able to cope.
You are widely read, that's true. But we'll find out what you know about ancient civilizations coming up next on TalkSport. This is TalkSport Extra Time. We are the two mics. That's Cleopatra coming at you. I can't say that I can tell you precisely who sang it. I'm sure the guys behind the glass can tell you.
Right, okay.
Cleopatra, apparently. But not obviously.
What's the name of the group? Cleopatra?
Yeah.
What, they've
Obviously
written a
not
song
the
about
Cleopatra.
themselves? Cleopatra's coming at you?
coming at you. Why not? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, lots of bands do that.
Hocus Focus by No, what was it? Hocus Pocus by Focus,
By
wasn't
Focus,
it?
that's
yeah.
right. Who were Dutch,
Dutch
funnily
group, yeah.
That doesn't ring any bells at all.
Yeah.
Now, we've given you many quizzes over the course of the last few months. This one I'm more excited about than any, really, because
really?
it's very educational, this one.
Okay.
And anyone who wants to know about ancient civilizations will get to learn quite a bit. Even if you don't get the answers right, I'll be explaining what the right answers are. Now, as ever, we were expecting you to get about 3 out of 10, which is your
No, you
general
wouldn't.
average
You see, you
score.
put me down all the time before we start in an attempt to try and
Well,
deflate.
how many did you get right in the James Bond quiz?
5.
You got 4.
5 out of 10.
You got 4 because I gave you one.
Rubbish.
Which you shouldn't have got. It was actually 3.
I
But
actually said, oh, well, it wasn't John Barry's thinking aloud, and you just sat there straight-faced, and I was looking for a reaction in your face. There was none, so I thought,
you don't do that on
I thought,
Mastermind.
I thought
Well,
that's,
you can't
that's,
do that. If on
that's a steer
as I
to the
said to
fact
you,
that
no.
it wasn't John Barry,
As
the
I-
author,
no, as I said to you
the
before-
composer of the song.
As I said to you before,
What song was it? It was
Diamonds Are Forever.
Diamonds Are Forever.
When you go on Mastermind, you don't look at the face of John Humphreys and say, well, it wasn't so-and-so, was it? And then he looks at you and you say, oh, well, I'll go with that then.
On Mastermind, I usually get 3 to 4 right on the specialist subject, whichever it is, and I get at least 80% of the general knowledge questions right. I do.
Yeah, right.
I do.
Well, so
I do.
yeah, we're getting about 3 or 4 right here. Anyway, let's get on with the quiz
Let's get
because
on with
time
it.
is short.
Okay.
And when you do get one right, which I suspect will be very, very rarely, you will hear this sound.
Okay.
Does that ring any bells? Indiana Jones, that is, isn't it?
Indiana Jones, yeah.
And if you get something wrong,
Yeah.
you'll hear this.
That sounds like the emergency in a James Bond film when the volcano's about to
It
erupt.
does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, shall we start then?
Yeah, come on, let's get on
Question
with it.
1, ancient civilizations.
Okay.
Mr. Mike Porky Parry, your specialist subject. Which Cadbury's chocolate bar, launched in 1967, made with nougatine and caramel, was named after an ancient people?
Aztec.
Very good.
There you go, you see?
Doesn't surprise me you got the one about chocolate right.
Until I thought about it, I was going to say bounty, you know? But
Yeah,
I didn't say Aztec.
that wasn't the real people.
Bounty, the bounty bar.
Yeah, I always wanted to go and live on that island where the bounty people lived.
They travelled to foreign climes.
Because they all look very attractive.
That's
and
right,
they walked around with very few clothes on, eating chocolate.
Eating chocolate, and in this blue lagoon. Fantastic, yeah. Right,
Question 2.
Right.
This is a proper question now. It doesn't
Okay.
involve chocolate.
Okay.
Where is the ancient city of Chichen Itza?
Chichen Itza is in the Peruvian, whatever it's called, you know, Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu.
Yeah?
Yep.
Wrong. See, you were doing that again there. You're saying Peruvian and looking at me to see if I would give some reaction. I'm not going to give you a reaction. It's actually in the Yucatan Peninsula. You know where that is?
The Yucatan?
Yeah. Do you know where that is?
No.
Mexico. You gave me a look there, like the same look that my dog gives me when I'm saying, no, you can't have any chicken.
That's a ridiculous question.
Question number 3.
Right, go on.
Which early civilization worshipped the jaguar as a god? I thought this would be particularly pertinent for you because you used to
jaguar?
worship a jaguar.
Jaguar.
Yeah. I'll give you a clue. It wasn't a car.
I had 4 Jaguars.
Yeah.
Four
Well, they
consecutive
worship the
jaguars.
jaguar as a god, but not the car.
Right, the jaguar. Now, the jaguar's natural habitat is South America.
Not bad.
So it's got to be, and we've had Aztec already. It could be the Incas.
You're doing it again, aren't you?
Hang on, it could be
I'm
the
not
Incas.
looking at you. I'm going to look over there.
Or it could be the Mayans. Could be the Mayans.
Could be.
The Mayans, they were a bit further south. I'm going to go for the Incas.
Wrong.
So who is it then?
It's the Mayans.
No! Oh, that's not fair.
What do you mean it's
That's
not fair?
That's really not fair.
Why? You're looking at me, looking for an answer. That's not fair either.
But I came up with the Mayans because nobody's ever heard of the Mayans except me.
What do you mean nobody's ever heard of them?
Well, you know,
I've been to Chichen Itza.
I had to research the back of my brain.
All right, let's go.
I want to change my answer. I want to say the Mayans, not the Incas.
Let's go with question 4. Which female pop
It's
band
stitched up.
made this song a hit in 1986?
This is called Walk Like an Egyptian,
Very good.
and it's the
It's your,
Bangles.
It's your time. The Bangles.
Bangles.
Correct.
Bangles. Hey. Woohoo.
Something's gone wrong with our system.
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well,
So you've now got one question right about a bar of chocolate and another question right about a pop song.
now hang on.
It's not really very good on the ancient civilization
But
front.
I got the Mayans, and
No, you
you
didn't.
No, you once again you steered me in the wrong direction.
I did not steer you in any direction.
I just got one right, and I want to hear the celebratory right answer. Thank you. That's better.
You've got 2 out of 4 so far. Question 5.
I'm so fed up about the Mayan answer.
Yeah, I know.
I
Could tell.
identified the Mayans.
You said it might be them. Your second choice. Number 5. Where was the Terracotta Army discovered, and what did it depict?
China.
Correct. I won't press you on where in China. I'll let you get that. And
It
for
was,
an extra.
it was Jiangsu province.
Correct.
Yeah.
Have you just read that from somewhere?
No. I
You
know
knew
that.
All right. Well, what did it depict then for an extra point?
Warriors who would look after the emperor forever.
Yeah. To which emperor?
Probably. This is not part of the answer. I've got the answer right.
You have got the answer right, but you get an extra point if you know.
This
if you
would
know
be
who-
the. What are you laughing at?
You just said you're so defensive. You've got a point.
Yeah.
Finally got one.
Yeah.
No, I'll give you an extra point if you can name the emperor.
It was the first emperor of the Ming Dynasty.
No, it was the first emperor of China.
Yeah, well, that's the Ming Dynasty.
No, it isn't, actually.
It is.
No, it's not.
It is.
All right, don't argue. You've got 3 points.
Well,
I'm not
look,
gonna
which
give you a
dynasty
fourth
was
one.
it then?
It wasn't a dynasty at all. It was just the first emperor of China.
Every era in Chinese history has been a dynasty.
All right, well, you can have a question about the Ming Dynasty later. You've
I
now
don't
got
want to
3
go
out
through
of
the
5.
Ming
You've got
Dynasty.
3 out of 5, which is normally
And
what
it should be
your score
4
is
because I got
out
the
of 10.
Mayans. I got the
Stop
Mayans.
arguing about that.
Go on.
Number 6. Which highly developed South American civilization was conquered and all but wiped out by the Spanish in the 16th century?
The Incas.
Correct.
Go.
Now he's getting really excited. He's got 4 right out of 6 already. Incredible.
Should be 5.
Number 7. Where were the Etruscan people based?
The Etruscans. Where were the Etruscans? Let me just think this one through. Are we still South America, so to speak?
Well, I'm not going to give you a clue.
Well, I need a clue. This
Why
is
do you need a
ridiculous.
clue? Well,
because
it's somewhere in the world.
You con me on the Mayans. The
Get over it.
Etruscans. Hang on, the Etruscans are. I know where
They're a major ancient civilization.
Major ancient civilization from Asia.
No,
Asia.
Wrong. They were based in Italy. They were the precursors of the Romans, in fact.
What a load of rubbish.
Based in Tuscany and Umbria.
What a load of.
What, you don't believe me?
Well, I just think that they're not an ancient civilization.
They are.
No, they're not. They're just a mob of a few, peasants rattling around in what's now Italy. No, I'm not having that.
768 BC to 264 BC.
And by the way, that's no disrespect to the modern Italian people, who of course are not peasants, but I mean, I'm talking about the Dark Ages, obviously.
They were not peasants. They were a very highly developed civilization.
Oh, what did they develop?
That's why they're in this quiz.
What did they develop?
They developed farming techniques. They developed all kinds of art. They made vases. They made, ceramics. Incredible.
Good.
Number 8. If you had a vase from China's Ming dynasty, how old would it be?
4,000 years old.
4,000?
Yes.
No. Wrong.
What then?
The Ming dynasty reigned from 1368 to 1644.
That's only 400 years.
That's right.
That's what I meant.
You said 4,000.
No, I didn't say 4,000 because you couldn't possibly have 4,000.
You just said 4,000.
4,000 would have put us 2,000 years BC. So it was just a slip of the tongue.
Slip of the tongue.
It was just a slip of the tongue.
Can you lend me 100 quid?
Hang on, it was just a slip of the tongue.
Can you lend me 100 quid?
I meant 400.
Can you lend me 400 quid? You give me £4,000, I'll give you 400 back. You wouldn't make that mistake, would you?
I meant 400. It's obvious to everybody around here. They're all nodding their heads now in sympathy.
All right, well, we can have a separate adjudication back in behind the glass.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? No, sorry. You still have 4 out of 8, which is much more like it now, back to 50%. Question number 9.
Yeah.
When was Tutankhamun alive?
Tutankhamun was alive in 2000 BC, 3,000 years ago.
3,000 years ago?
Yeah.
Incorrect.
No, it's not incorrect.
It is incorrect.
So what is the answer?
He was alive from around about. He was born in 1346 BC.
That's 2,500 years ago.
That's not 3,000 years ago, though, is it?
Well, it's near. It's much nearer. I mean, that's now. Come on, that's outrageous.
Look, more than 500 years out.
No, it's not more than 500 years out. I got it in the right millennium.
All right, I'll tell you what.
I got it in the right millennium.
I'll give you a chance.
I got it in the right millennium. 3,000 years ago is the right millennium.
No, it isn't.
It is for 2,500 years
It's
ago.
not.
It is.
1346 BC.
Yeah.
Is not inside.
It
anyway,
is.
Let me ask you this: if you want to get the point, do you know one?
Hang on. You're mad.
How am I mad?
We are now at 2,000 years
Why
AD.
are you arguing about something you got wrong?
Hang on, 2,000 years
wrong.
AD, right? Do you agree?
2014.
Yeah, AD.
Yes.
And you're saying it's 13 what?
1346.
BC.
He was born.
Well, that adds up, mate, to 3,000 years ago, which is what I've just said to you.
3,360.
But it's 3,000 years ago. It was in the 3,000 years ago millennium, hey?
What are you getting so worked up about?
Because you're cheating again. Everybody listening now will say, I've got that right.
I'll tell you what, we'll get another adjudication from the panellists behind the glass.
Well, if they cheat me on this,
No,
that's rubbish.
it's wrong.
I'm not having that. I'm sorry. So if I'd have said 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years
If you said 2,000 years ago, that would have been right.
No, it wouldn't. Because 2,000 years ago would give us 0 BC AD. But 1,300 years before that is 3,000 years ago.
I'll tell you what I'll do.
Your basic
I'll tell you what I'll do.
maths?
Well, 3,000 years ago means 3,000 or less, right? It's 3,000 plus.
Rubbish. No, I've got that right. I'm sorry that you're just being obtuse now. I definitely got that right. I said 3,000 years ago. It is in fact 3,346 years ago, which makes me right.
Well, if you really want the point,
Any reasonable
why don't you tell me
person.
how old he was when he became the pharaoh?
He was 9.
Correct.
Thank you.
You get the point.
Right, there you go. Right, see? You lot behind the glass there,
It
trying to
takes it
stitch me
also
up.
personally. Right, final answer
yeah.
for number 10. You've so far got 5 out of 9. Which
I've got
is,
6 because I got Mayan right.
You did not get that right. Number 10. Which British actress was the female lead in The Mummy?
The Mummy?
Yeah. Have you seen that? There was more than one of them.
Ooh,
Quite a big movie.
The Mummy.
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago?
Not that long ago. I'm not talking about Boris Karloff.
Right. In that case, I reckon it was... The Mummy. Wish you'd asked me about Cleopatra, because that was Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah.
That's Elizabeth Taylor.
Well, I didn't ask you about that. I asked you about The Mummy.
Angelina Jolie.
Which British actress?
Oh, I see. Right, okay.
Angelina Jolie's not British.
No, she's not, unfortunately.
Rachel Weisz is the answer.
I've never heard of Rachel Weisz, so I didn't get that right. I've never seen The Mummy, anyway.
She's never heard of you. 5 out of 10. Not bad for Porky.
Six.
Expert in ancient civilizations. There'll be another quiz coming up very soon.
On DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM. Extra Time with Mike Graham on Talk Sport.
Good morning, I'm Mike Graham and you're listening to Extra Time with the two Mikes. Mr. Mike Parry is next to me. We've been talking about a great many things. Coming up in this hour, Tim Vickery's going to join us because he's got some news for us from Brazil, which will not keep, and we'll be hearing from him very, very shortly. Also, we'll be keeping your texts and tweets and emails coming in, loads of them coming in about the Porky quiz and his inability to admit anything about whether he is wrong or not. Keep your calls coming in as well. 08717 22 3344. You're listening to Extra Time with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on TalkSport.
Yeah,
and so,
yeah, there are a lot of tweets and messages coming in.
I think we should read some of them out.
And a lot of them are very, very complimentary, but of course you wouldn't read those out. He was doing so well at the beginning, I thought he might get 10 out of 10. Good work, Porky. That comes from Arvin. Thank you very much indeed, Arvin. It's nice to hear from my supporters like that. Thank you very much
indeed. How about
indeed.
one from Naomi who says, why can't Porky Parry ever accept that he is wrong?
Of course I accept it. If it's 100% and the playing field is level and I get it wrong, I admit it. But the playing field's not level on these quizzes.
It is
loaded.
The quizzes are set by qualified people and they're adjudicated independently by the people behind the glass who are completely and utterly neutral on these things. Lee in South Wales says, so Mr. Parry, the so-called James Bond expert, hasn't heard of Rachel Weisz, who's married to Daniel Craig.
Oh, yes, that's right, yeah. Well, I kind of knew that,
Did you?
but I didn't really know which film she'd been in.
Right.
Because she's not as famous as her husband. Now, I've got a little tweet here, Mike, and it says, I've got a picture here of where Porky's latest watch came from, and I'll show you the picture.
It looks like one of those machines.
It's one of those
fairground machines.
Grab machines where you put your money in and a little grab comes down.
I bet that's where it did come from.
Going to grab you a teddy bear or something.
Why don't you bring the next time Toby's here?
Yes.
And we're all here. Why don't you bring in the Sheikh's watch and you can have a look at it?
Okay, that's a good idea. I'll do that.
And you might be able to value it
before I get it valued. Now, listen, Mike, I want to talk to you about something I read over the weekend because it's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. Got a huge here. IRMG tonight. I wonder if we'll get Porky disagreeing with you, saying no. I can't wait, says Tony.
Yeah, well, that came in ages ago.
He says you can be hilarious. Yeah, I know, but I wanted to refer back to that because I didn't say no. I was trying to get justice for myself.
We are now having a consistent game of Porky Bingo, and the bingo sign has gone off quite a few times, and people have got their bingo cards from a while ago.
Now then,
what do you want to tell us about Brian Blessed?
Well, Brian Blessed, you see, holds a place in my heart because he was one of the original cops in Z-Cars.
That's right, he was.
And
Fancy
Z-Cars.
Smith, wasn't he?
Fancy Smith, absolutely right. The two big white Zephyrs, da-da-da. Now, of course, that is Everton's theme tune.
Do they have to explain that, actually? That's a good point. Do they have to explain that to sort of younger Everton fans?
No.
Because Z-Cars was a very long time ago.
No, not at all. It's because the music's always plays, the teams come out, any little lad who goes there age 4 or 5 immediately, is
I know, but I mean, do you have to tell them what Z-Cars was, though? Or is it kind of surpassed that now?
No. I mean, the little boy's dad might tell him, don't worry, Z-Cars or not. But I mean, Z-Cars adopted it from another song. It was a folk song called Little Johnny Somebody or Other, who I can never remember about because, I don't get into that sort of folk song.
Doesn't sound like a folk song.
It was a folk song, yeah.
I said, what's the instrument it's played on, actually, in the Z-Cars original? Because it's not immediately discernible. So it's not a guitar. It's not a piano.
Is it a xylophone?
No, I don't think so. Maybe we'll have to find a copy of it and see whether we can discern what it is.
Electric organ,
yeah,
maybe?
It doesn't really sound like that, does
Anyway, look, the point is, that's why Brian Blessed first came to my attention.
Yes.
Now, I read a piece over the weekend about Brian Blessed, a most remarkable man. I have never come across a man who is so confident in his own belief. For instance, it's one of these, Q&A things, asked about his life and all that kind of stuff.
You get asked about to do quite a few of those, don't
I do, yeah. But anyway, he's asked, what is your biggest achievement? And he answers without any problem, I hold a world record. I'm the oldest man in the world to get to 28,500 feet without oxygen. I was 68 at the time. I'm also the oldest man to reach the magnetic North Pole on foot, which I did 9 years ago. I still love going on adventures.
Well, that's something to be proud of, isn't it?
Well, something to be
What's
proud
wrong
of.
with that?
And he goes on to be asked, what's your biggest disappointment? He says, the fact that I've never visited Mars, Venus or Saturn.
No.
So again, that's pretty
Well, I mean,
self-assured.
he was in Flash Gordon, so I mean, he was kind of in the space area, wasn't he?
Yeah. What are you best at? So, he suppressed his modest side here by saying, telling stories, actually. I'm known as a raconteur. Alec Guinness, who was, of course, one of the most famous actors in the history of the British theatre, and film, would never tire of hearing me tell about the time I met the Dalai Lama.
The Dalai Lama?
The Dalai Lama. So, I mean, it's quite remarkable. I first met him in 1990 when I went to Everest. So the Dalai Lama must be waiting on the top of Everest. But I knew I'm only joking.
He lives in Nepal, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I knew I would meet him even when I was just a coal miner's son swimming in the canal in Yorkshire. I mean, how would you know when you're a coal miner's son swimming in the canal in Yorkshire you're going to meet the Dalai Lama?
Very unwise, that swimming in the canal as well.
And he goes to say to me he's always been a god king. So anyway, when Brian Blessed eventually meets the Dalai Lama, he says, my first conversation with him was, you are the most fortunate and unfortunate man, Your Holiness. Most unfortunate because you've lost a kingdom and a country, but fortunate because you have been given the opportunity to love your enemy, the Chinese. And do you know what the Dalai Lama said to me? He said, that is very wise. See, that he did love the Chinese. I would love to be him for a day. He's a very evolved human being. So, again, the modest side of Brian is a little bit suppressed.
He's a larger-than-life character, isn't he? I mean, he's one of the great British kind of characters, really. There's not too many of them left.
Anyway, he's then asked, what would you like to
Been in Talk Sport quite a few times as well.
Of course he has. And we've, his voice is legendary. He's in that.
We interviewed him, I think, on the morning.
We did interview him. We did interview him.
And did he not record a little ditty for us?
He did.
As well?
He recorded a dotty for us. Said the 2 mics or something.
Yeah.
A ditty, yeah.
You're listening to 2 mics.
Anyway, so he's then asked, what would you like to be better at? And he says, perfecting the art of the Chinese language. He says, I want to master it, and I'm taking lessons because this quite got me. I speak to the Chinese ambassador a lot. I don't know why you'd speak to the Chinese ambassador.
Well, maybe it's because, he does an awful lot of adverts in this country. Maybe he's outlived his possibilities here, and he wants to do some adverts in Chinese.
No, he says, I speak to the Chinese ambassador a lot as I'm involved with wildlife projects that involve saving bears in China, which is a very good thing. He also said I can speak a bit of Japanese as well, because I did a lot of judo. So, I don't know, I didn't know that people who did judo had to learn Japanese.
He's obviously had a remarkable life.
Anyway, he's then asked, what is your biggest fear? And again, Brian manages to suppress his modesty. He says, I don't have any fear at all. Next year I'm going to climb Sangay, which means terror. It's the most dangerous volcano in the world. I mean, it's great, but this is the there are a few more questions there, and the answers are quite illuminating. But this is the one that really got me. He's asked, who would you like to say sorry to and why? And his answer is, the gardening teacher at my school. He adored me, but who I may have given a heart attack to and killed.
Dear me.
Yeah. I was a young Titchmarsh, that's a reference to Alan Titchmarsh, obviously, and we had acres of land that he'd wanted me to help him out with. But when I was given the choice at school of picking my own subject, I went for bookbinding, and I never explained to him, and he died the next day from a heart attack. He was very proud of me as a gardener, but I was very bad at bookbinding and wanted to perfect it. So the
Do you know who he reminds me of?
Who?
You.
Why?
Because everything's about him.
No. What I'm saying is
he wants to say that as tragic as it was that his gardening teacher died. the reason that his gardening teacher died might have been because he didn't do a course with him.
That's exactly what he's saying.
That's the kind of thing you would come
That's
out
what
with.
he's saying.
But that's the kind of thing you would come out
Blessed
with.
is saying that because he decided not to do gardening at school, the gardening teacher was so distressed because Brian Blessed was a very able gardener that the poor gardening teacher had a heart attack the next day and died.
It sounds a bit unlikely, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, that's an extraordinary, extraordinary tale, really.
I can't imagine that the two events were in any way connected. But what I admire about a guy like Brian Blessed is that he has achieved incredible things in his life, and he still wants to carry on achieving them. But he very much, some of his answers very much. If I was to ask you those kinds of questions, you would be similarly expansive about your confidence, because you're a very confident guy, and you're quite egotistical.
I never explained to the gardening teacher why I chose bookbinding, and he died the next day from a heart attack. I mean, it's amazing, amazing.
But it's not amazing. It's just these things happen. I don't think it's anything to do with the two events at all.
Yeah. Anyway, finally, he gets to which words or phrases do you most overuse? And his answer to this one is, "Gordon's alive." Now,
That's
apparently,
true.
that's from Flash Gordon.
That is from Flash Gordon.
Right. Now, and this was made, 25 years ago?
No, more than that, probably.
1980.
It was probably in the 80s. It's in the 80s, yeah.
Right.
You've got to say it as a question as well.
Yeah.
Try and say it as a question.
Gordon's alive?
That's it. Exactly. Very good.
Is that it?
That's
Okay,
it.
it's not got a question mark here. Anyway, he says, I must say it about 100 times a day. If I'm in London, the builders, the butcher and the candlestick maker all shout, please say, Gordon's alive, mate, and I get it wherever I go. Now, he then goes on, again, suppressing his modesty, to say, even David Cameron made me say it, and I went to number 10 when I went to have a meeting about explorers. All those politicians were in the hallway, and suddenly Mr. Cameron shouted out, please say, Gordon's alive. So I bellowed it out, and he roared with laughter. He found it very amusing.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did. But like I say, I think what we should do is we should keep that particular set of questions and answers, and we should give them to you.
Okay.
And I think people would find a lot of very, very strong similarities between the way that you answer questions and the way that he does.
Okay, we do that in the quiz next time you're with me when you come back from your holiday. Finally, who would you play in a film of your life? And again, suppressing his modesty, Mr. Blessed says, if he were alive today, it would have to, of course, be Marlon Brando. He was a hulk of a man, and I'm 17.5 stone. Sheer talent and his ability to pull off any accent. His Irish accent was sublime, and he was mesmerising in the 1976 Western, The Missouri Breaks, with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't so
World's
sure
most
about
modest
his,
man, Mr. Brian Blessed.
yeah.
A friend of the station, and truly a great character.
Only outshone by your good self, I think, on that one. This is Talk Sport Extra Time. Tim Vickery's coming up next.
That boy needs therapy. Psychosomatic. That boy needs therapy. Psychosomatic. That boy needs therapy.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the two Mikes, Mike Porky Parry and myself, Mike Graham. It's that time of the week when we catch up with Mr. Tim Vickery, our erstwhile World Cup correspondent. Mr. Vickery, very good morning to you.
Brian Blessed there. Did I hear that?
You did hear Brian Blessed, yeah. Gordon's alive, but it was a very good impression, I thought, by Mr. Parry.
Yeah, well done. I used to know an actor many years ago who was kind of fat, bearded, and shouted all his lines. And he bitterly resented the fact that usually when a role came up that needed these qualities, it went to Brian Blessed rather than himself.
He should have changed his image, perhaps.
Yeah, he should have done, yeah.
Right, should have got thin. And shaved off the beard and not shouted.
Stop
quite
shouting.
so
Yeah,
much.
no, exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's why I was intrigued to learn from this interview that he's thinking about learning Chinese, because I'm thinking he's maybe saturated the UK advertising market. There's so many adverts now.
That's right.
That maybe there's room for him in China where he can start shouting over there.
Selling Scotch whisky in China. It's becoming a big market, a really big market, Tim. You should get into it.
Yell at them, yell at those Chinese enough, and they won't jump up and down at the same time and create that big tidal wave. Maybe that's the secret.
Absolutely right.
Now, we've got a bunch of things to talk about. Mr. Parry's got a question for you coming up shortly, but let's start with Argentina.
Then let it
because,
be asked.
Yeah, well,
Let it be asked.
yeah, it will be, but
Mike
first
Parry's
let's
insatiable curiosity.
Well,
must
It is.
sate
It is. It is. In fact, I'll tell you what. I'll hit you with it first,
Go
Tim.
on then,
Okay.
you start with
it. So that old MG here, Mike Graham, doesn't
Have you
take you
forgotten
down
my
trail.
name already?
Now, the thing is, Tim, I've done a bit of research on the geographical population of South America, and I've discovered that a hell of a lot of people from Argentina who came to Brazil for the World Cup have no intention now of going home, because Brazil is a booming economy, Argentina is collapsing into a morass of economic despair, and they've all decided Brazil's a better bet.
Well, also, they don't have enough money even to get home.
Is that
to
right?
come over.
Is that
That's the
right?
other reason, yeah.
They cornered the market in kind of beaten up old camper vans and old cars with shoddy mattresses thrown in the back. And they were away. And the Brazilian authorities had a huge problem trying to find out where to park them. And the Argentine consulate has done a busy trade in trying to loan these people enough money to get the bus back home, because for some of them, their cars just won't take them back.
Really? How far would the road journey have been for them to get there?
Oh, it's a big place, South America.
Sure,
it's
I know,
long way. And the road trip to Buenos Aires from Rio would be, you wouldn't get much change out of 60 hours, I don't think. It's a long, long way.
60 hours, blimey.
So, I mean, that could be, realistically, you could drive about 8 hours a day. You could be driving for 7 days just to get from one to the other.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, loads of the immigrants in Brazil came from the poor northeast and came down south to Rio and Sao Paulo. My girlfriend's parents, there were two ways of doing it. You either came down on a boat, or you came down on the back of a truck, and it took you something like 7 or 8 days to get from the northeast of Brazil down to the south. It's a huge place.
Yeah, I know.
Loads of people think that Mexico is in South America. It isn't at all. Mexico's in North America. And just to give you an idea of the distance involved, the distance between, when Argentina won the World Cup in '86 in Mexico, and people say that they were nearly at home, they really weren't. The distance between Mexico City and Buenos Aires, they are further apart than London and Mumbai.
Wow.
Golly, that's incredible.
And what about
incredible.
what about the sort of, I mean, Brazilian, as Mike was saying, is in parts anyway a booming economy. I mean, what's the immigration situation if you were to come from Argentina and decide just to stay? Can you?
Well, yeah, you can, because they're part of Mercosur. It's a kind of common citizenship type thing.
So like the EU kind of scenario.
That kind of thing, yeah. Although Brazil's boom is really showing signs of slowing up, and it's also, if you haven't got that job, the cost of living in Brazil is just much higher than the cost of living in Argentina. So if you haven't got regular income coming in, then you might really struggle. So I can well understand how some of those Argentines are enchanted by the fact that it's because winter at the moment in Argentina, it's genuinely cold. It's really cold down there. It's wrap up warmly time, whereas winter at the moment, we were 36 degrees on the beach today. So I can well understand how loads of Argentines will come in, will be enchanted by it. But I don't think it's an easy start, especially because those languages, the Argentines speak Spanish and the Brazilians speak Portuguese. Now, on the written word, on the page, they don't look that far apart. But as soon as you start opening their mouths, it's very, very different. And when Carlos Tevez was playing in Brazil for Corinthians, Emerson Leal took over as coach, the Brazilian former goalkeeper. And the first thing he did was to strip Tevez of the captaincy, because he said, look, I don't understand a word that Tevez says, and he doesn't understand a word that I say. So there are communication difficulties as well. So for those Argentines who are trying it on, it's not going to be easy to get themselves established.
It's interesting. They wouldn't do that here, would they? I mean, you get a foreign manager who doesn't speak very good English. They don't say you can't manage the team.
No, they don't. Just on that movement of populations, Tim, you remember that Celtic won the European Cup in 1967 in Lisbon.
Yeah, in Lisbon.
Right. Yeah. In 2006, so work that out how many years on that is, 40 years on, just under 40 years on, Mr. Brazil and I were in Lisbon, and a taxi driver turned up, and he spoke English with a Scottish accent. His father was a Celtic fan who never went home because Celtic won there, and he stayed forever. He was a taxi driver for the next 30 years in Lisbon, married a Portuguese girl, had a son, and this bloke honestly came in. Brazil and I were sitting there. This bloke opened his mouth because he recognised Brazil, and we looked around the room and thought, is that a tannoy or a speaker or something? He couldn't believe it, So that's the way that football can move populations.
Yeah,
that's absolutely because I've always heard those stories, about that they loved it so much, Celtic, they stayed on. But you always think it's an urban myth.
No, they did. No.
Well, it's like the other story that was told, and I'm not sure if this was a myth, but certainly 9 months after Celtic lost to Porto in the UEFA Cup, which was the last UEFA Cup in Seville. I think you were at the game.
Yes, I was. It was a game.
9 months later, there were a lot of kids born with red hair.
Well, could well have been. Could well have been. Mr. Brazil, on that occasion, by the way, Tim, very kindly, we were in a hotel. I mean, I'm telling you, it was carpeted green, Seville, with the fans who came and just slept in the streets, in the road, in the parks, and all that. And I went out to do a job, of course, in the evening, where Mr. Brazil just, very kindly propped up the bar for me in my absence. And when I came back, I went into my room. There were 4 Celtic fans sleeping in my bed. Brazil had given my room away whilst I wasn't there to 4 old mates who suddenly turned up, and I had to sleep in the bath. That's the sort of thing you get working around
shocking. Now, let's talk about
some. Only happening in Norwegian Wood.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Let's talk about some of the new South Americans that we're going to be watching in the Premier League in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, another couple may be coming. One, certainly, for Newcastle, Facundo Ferreira, who's an Argentine centre-forward. He's on a year's loan from Shakhtar Donetsk in Ukraine. Obviously, that has something...
this is the guy who doesn't want to go back to Ukraine for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Right?
Even though his nickname is Chucky, which I think has to do with those films. I can't remember what they're called in English, but
God, they're horrible. Yeah, they're horrible films.
Child's Play.
It's the doll that goes...
Yeah, Child's Play, they called it. Yeah.
Chucky's in Love or something. Chucky.
No, that was a Ricky Lee Jones song.
That was, sorry. Yeah. But I know what you're talking about, Tim. Yeah, pretty horrible.
But I think that's where he got that nickname from, because he looks a little bit like
he looks like it, really?
Like the Mad Doll. Yeah.
I don't think he's going to cause quite the same amount of fear in Premier League defences. And he's a run-of-the-mill Argentine target man centre-forward. He's not going to create anything from nothing. He's one of those who can push the ball into the back of the net, and he doesn't do a great deal else. Maybe if Fulham fans might remember, Facundo Sava was that kind of type of player. He's never going to create any, but if you've got wingers who can get to the line and get service in for him to apply the final touch, then maybe. But I'll be very, very surprised if he's a more than 10 goals a season man.
And what about the Copa Libertadores? What's going on there? Because it's getting close to the end, isn't it?
Final time, yeah, 2-legged final. And we're going to get a new name on the trophy. It could be San Lorenzo of Argentina, the Pope's side, who are the only one of the big 5 in Buenos Aires who've never won the Libertadores. They've got close, they've got semi-finals, but this is their first final. They're away in the first leg against Nacional of Paraguay, who are a traditional club, but with a very small fan base, really. And this is the first time they've ever made it out of the group phase of the Libertadores.
Is this the first time there's no Brazilian team in the final as well?
For a while, yeah, Brazilian teams have won it the last 4 years. So, and the Brazilian teams, they pay salaries, honestly, 40, 50 times greater than the likes of Nacional of Paraguay. So it really does sum up the dreadful moment for Brazilian football. And last year, Atletico Mineiro won it on penalties against another Paraguayan side, Olimpia. And the entire Olimpia wage bill wouldn't pay the salary of Ronaldinho, who was Atletico's star. And even then, Atletico needed penalties to do it. No Brazilian interest this time. Nacional of Paraguay, they're at home in the first leg, and they've come up with a crafty way of filling the stadium, because just their own fans won't fill it. So they want to get as many fans of other Paraguayan teams and rally them to the cause. So the ticket prices, this is the first leg of the final of their equivalent to the Champions League. The most expensive are about 11 quid. The cheap ones in the terraces, around 3 quid. About 4,000 fans travelling from Argentina, and they have to pay between 65 and 90 quid. So this really is a case of fleece the travelling support and try and get as many of your own home support in as possible to create an atmosphere for Wednesday's first leg.
Excellent, excellent. What about finally Ronaldinho? Any more news on where he's likely to be going, or has he got anywhere yet?
No, we were expecting an announcement last week, but last week all he said was no news yet. The pole position is probably New York Red Bulls. But I don't know a lot about MLS, but every time I talk to people who cover that region, they say it's a very physical league. And Ronaldinho, unfortunately, these days, he doesn't have much gas in the tank. He can still come up with the odd fantastic moment. He's still wonderful from free kicks. But from open play, if it is physically intense, you wonder how much you'll get on the ball. So perhaps New York Red Bulls are having second thoughts.
Yeah, perhaps they are. Tim, listen, that's great. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tim. Always great to speak to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Tim Vickery there reporting in from Brazil. You know a bit about MLS. They are very, very physical over in America, because that's how they won, got so far as in the World Cup as they did in America, because they were incredibly fit. We'll talk some more about that, plus much, much more. Porky's going to tell us something about spiders that you didn't know. Coming up next on TalkSport.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.
This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the two mics. There will be a podcast available, as per usual, a few hours from now on iTunes, of course. Mr. Mike Parry has been here with me for a 3-hour special, and we're going to talk about spiders now. Are you a fan of the Spider-Man films, by any chance?
Well, yeah, I am actually. I think they're quite good because I like the principle of the spider. Now, when I was a little kid, my parents always told me, I don't know why or where they got this from, don't be frightened of spiders. Spiders are very clean. They said spiders, you know, if they see them crawling around, they keep things clean.
Well, you should never kill spiders.
Never kill. Well, I wouldn't dream of killing a spider.
But you'd kill a fly, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, I'd kill a fly with a rolled up newspaper or something like that. Swat it in the air.
Or a wasp.
Yeah, well, not a wasp. I'd like the wasp to try and get away if it could. But flies carry germs. That's the point.
They do.
Spiders don't. Spiders are there to literally sort of clean things up.
Well, also they catch all the flies. So it's not a bad idea to have a spider around.
I'm not sure they do. This is the point I'm going to make, you see.
Really?
Now, I tell my housekeeper lady sometimes just to ignore the corner of a ceiling in one of my rooms because I want the spiders to get their webs woven, OK? And in particular, in the garden...
So I've got this vision of your room sort of all cobwebby then, is that...
No, one corner of it.
Really?
The most beautiful things in the world, cobwebs, spiders' cobwebs. Now, Spiders' webs, yeah. Now, more particularly... I like her to ignore one corner of the roof garden and put 2 chairs about 6 feet apart, 2 wooden chairs, you know, got nice big wooden chairs there. Because if you do that, the spider then can weave his web, and it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Because
they are geometrically amazing, aren't they?
They're utterly fantastic. They absolutely mesmerise me, and I can sit there as the sun's going down and look at them and stare in absolute amazement. Do you know, some of the webs a spider can make are 15 feet wide.
Are they?
15 feet wide.
Well,
right?
you know, it depends on the kind of spider. In a house I once lived in, not in the one I currently live in, one particular summer, there was this very unusual looking sort of orange and black spider, which it turns out is a regular kind of garden spider, but I just hadn't seen it before. And they used to weave amazingly big webs, because they literally catch everything.
They do. Now, the point is, you say to yourself, well, how do they do that? But I've studied the way they do it, and it's quite remarkable. Imagine an aeroplane dropping a rope out of it because it's going to rescue somebody. And you know when you see the rope sort of swaying... Like a helicopter, that's right. You see the rope swaying in the wind and all that kind of stuff. What a spider does is, it's very aware of its surrounding. It's aware of the wind speed and it's aware of the temperature. And it literally releases a thread and it dangles in the wind, and it knows precisely, because of the way the wind is blowing, where that thread's going to go.
But it normally comes down the thread, doesn't it? Does it normally not drop down?
Well, I'm about to tell you. So what the spider can do is, it can dangle the thread out on chair A, and the wind can pick it up, and it can blow it over until it sticks onto chair B. The spider then goes along that thread, it walks along it, and as it's walking along it releases a second thread, and it crosses to the other side, secures the thread that it's brought, the second thread, and now it can walk back into the middle of the first thread, lower himself onto the second thread. That gives a triangular framework, and it can use that to build up the entire web, And that can take like an hour or two. And the whole thing is built of 2 types of thread. There's a non-sticky radii, which the spider can walk along, and there's the sticky spiral connecting the paths which trap the insects, And when it's finished, it eats up many of the initial threads, because they're just construction threads, you see what I mean?
So it's like scaffolding?
Like scaffolding, absolutely right, mate. A very good analogy.
How fascinating.
And they were only used for the construction process. They're not needed for the completion of the web.
And the other thing that's
interesting... It is fascinating
business.
It really is.
Fascinating. The other thing that's interesting about spiders is that they work alone, don't they? You
never
never see 2 spiders making a web.
No, they do. But I've never seen a spider... In all the time that I've, observed spiders' webs, I've never seen a spider get its prey. I've never seen a spider. I've never seen a spider go after a fly.
Because one of the places that you quite often find spiders' webs is on the old mirror next to the car. I don't know if you ever get into your car and there's a spider who's made a web.
Sometimes on a dewy morning.
Yeah. I had one car where I had a spider that actually lived in the mirror.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and no matter how far or how fast he went, he would obviously just climb behind the mirror into the casing, and every morning he'd come out and he'd be there again. And the other day, I was getting into the car, and there was actually a web, quite a big web, which was going between the car and the mirror.
Right.
And in the web was like a very, quite sort of half a smallish bee, or a wasp or something like that.
Really?
And the spider was actually eating it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It was amazing.
I'm not sure I'd want to see that.
Why not?
Because that's taking nature a bit too far for me. Well, I love the spider's web.
The spider was all over it. It had like all 8 legs on it. And you could just see it just kind of devouring
I'm not sure I'd wanted to see that. But I mean, what I do like
a Richard Attenborough thing.
Yeah, well,
Or
it
David
sounds very
Attenborough.
much like that. I love to see the spider's web with the sun behind it, or actually dewy in the mornings
Yeah.
when the dew is out. Now, dew settles on grass, but it also settles on spiders'
It
webs. Most magical shapes.
Mind you, there's nothing worse than walking through one without when you don't know it's there.
I don't mind walking through a spider's web. In fact, I quite enjoy it. In fact, sometimes I go out in the garden at night and I just thrash around to get a few webs in my hair and that kind of stuff.
You
So
thrash
that-
around?
Well, you know what I mean. I sort of walk around and you do pick up
Well, you
threads.
mean on the
and-
roof garden? You don't mean in the garden?
I mean my roof garden, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a garden. You don't call it a garden. It's not a garden.
It's my roof
A
garden.
garden is on the ground floor.
Hang on, it's my roof garden. It's got plants.
Yeah.
It's got
It's not a
tiles
garden, is
on
it?
the floor. It's got hanging baskets. Of course it's a garden. What do you think it
It's
is?
a roof garden.
What does it sound like? Does it sound like, a
Well,
warehouse?
has it got a lawn?
Well, of course it hasn't got a lawn
Well, it
because
can't
it's on
be
the
a garden, then.
fourth floor, you
You can't
fool.
have a garden that doesn't have a lawn.
Yes, you can.
It's a
Plenty
roof
of
garden.
people take up their lawns and have tiling put down.
And then it's a patio.
And no, it's not a patio.
But it's not a garden if it doesn't have any grass.
I had a house in Banstead in Surrey.
Yeah.
And it was a new one, and instead of turfing it, I got a bloke with a JCB to come in, remove it all, and tile the whole thing, and put a pond in the middle.
How bourgeois.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awful. That's not a good thing.
No, it's not, because the maintenance of a garden with flagstones in it is much, much easier than a garden with a lawn, because the lawns have to be cut.
Well, I'm sure the spiders were very grateful that you took all the greenery away.
Well, spiders live in the fences and all that kind of stuff. They don't live on grass, so they didn't
That's
need
a
all
terrible
that.
thing to do, that.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's a very wise and right thing to do. And I stepped the garden up, 2 steps and then another 12 yards,
Shocking.
then 2 steps, another 12
What
yards.
about the environment?
What about the environment?
Well, surely you would have wanted the grass and the trees and all the
No.
flowers and everything else to grow there.
No, because you have to cut it and all that. It
That's
was
shocking.
It was done with what you call something that the water runs
Complete
into.
disregard for anybody else.
No, not at all. I wasn't harming anybody else.
Did you have a
And-
water feature?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I told you I had a pond.
Yeah, but did you also have a running water feature, I mean?
No, I had a pond with a fountain in the middle. And
Also,
all-
did the fountain go all night? 'Cause there's nothing. I used to live next door to somebody
you
who had a
switch it
fountain.
off. You used to switch it
But
off.
they didn't switch it off. It used to annoy the hell out of me.
Oh no,
It was
switch
really
it
noisy.
off. And also there were they dug a lot of these big holes and then put a grid over it so all the water runs in off the tiles.
Sounds
and
like they were doing a
and
lot of work
pavement
there.
stones. A lot of work.
I think
Yeah.
your neighbours really liked that.
Well, it was a brand new house. I don't even know if there was anybody next door when I had it all done, you see. I was efficient, and I had a fence put on either side, and it was, it looked great, because I had it organised and got it sorted before. You see some people going to new houses, right, and it really irritates me like madness. They move in and they think, well, I'm not going to bother with the garden. So they have a
They let it
garden.
grow.
Well, they have a garden. Looks like a building site
Yeah,
because
that's
it is
not
a
good.
building site.
No, that's not good.
So if I'm in my bedroom, on the upper floors, and I'm looking out, and I'm 3 doors away, I see somebody's bought a house, but they haven't bothered with the garden.
And
I
that's
go
what
round-
happens if you live in a dodgy area, though, isn't
No,
it?
no, no, no,
I mean,
no.
most people look after the garden.
No. This is a very top class area, top class. And I get one along, and I knocked on the guy's door, and I said, "Hi, how you doing?" I said, "You're a new neighbour." I said, "Come and have a drink," or something like that. And then after I'd given him like half a bottle of whiskey, I said, "Now, when are you going to get your garden done?"
Right.
And he said, "What?" I said, "Well, there's a bylaw around here that you've got to have your gardens done. If you don't, we have to report you to the council. I'm from the residents
Sure, he loved all
committee."
that.
Yeah, well, he got his garden done anyway, eventually, because I made him think that he'd get prosecuted if he didn't.
That's a shocking story.
No, it's not. No, it's psychology. Psychology, Mike. Got to have a bit of
Terrible.
psychology.
Absolutely awful. Mike Porky Parry is here. I'm Mike Graham. We are the 2 Mikes. Loads more coming next.
Talk Sport. On air, online and on TV at Freeview Channel 723.
Never lose it. Wild boys never chose this way. Wild boys never close your eyes. Wild boys always shine.
This is Talk Sports Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. A couple of tweets to read out to you. Brad
yeah.
Cab says, "Is Porky trashing around in the roof garden trying to reach, thrashing around rather, you should be saying, trying to reach the hanging baskets with his short arms?" And Thomas says, "Did I just hear Porky saying he goes outside and looks to walk through spiders' webs?"
Yeah.
What a maniac.
Well, no, I don't deliberately, but I go out and it's dark, and I can either fully light the roof garden, or I can half light it, or I can no light it. You see what I mean? 'Cause
No
I've got
light it.
I've got a light system, yeah. And
A light system.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
How many lights has it got, this roof garden?
It's got 3 different ones. It's got dim,
Dim.
Yeah, Dim,
Yeah.
Normal and Bright.
Right.
Okay. yeah.
Sounds like a three-man comedy team. I know which one you'd be.
Dim, Normal.
Dim, Normal and Bright. Yeah, well, these will be the three mics for that one. Now, you would have heard there the Duran Duran music. You might have recognised the song. A song called Wild Boys.
That's right.
There was a strange story about Duran Duran, actually, the other
weird,
day.
Mike. You know,
about how they were suing their one of their fan clubs.
I think it's in Chicago
Yeah, I
or
think so,
Michigan
yeah.
or somewhere like that. And I couldn't believe it when I looked at it. And they're suing them for $28,500
Right.
US dollars.
Not very much money, really,
Not
for
very
them.
much
you would
money.
have thought.
And let's say this is all apparently, because we read it in a newspaper.
Yeah.
It's about the fact that the club still sell merchandise, Duran Duran, over there in America, and they don't. The allegation is they're not getting their percentages of the, the cut that the group get from sales of
Which you might
merchandise.
say is probably a matter of principle more than it is a matter of actual money. But the small amount, it did seem remarkable to me that Simon Le Bon would even care about that kind of money.
I mean, this guy was once so rich he lost a yacht in a yacht race, and it just sunk.
Well, he nearly lost his life.
Nearly lost his life. That was called the Rum or something. The Rum, I think it was called
Was
the
it
Rum.
the Rum? Yeah.
Now, do you know why it was called the Rum?
Right.
Because when I was a young journalist in Birmingham, and so I'd be in them days about 22 or 23 or something like that, I worked actually ostensibly in a district office called Redditch, which is a lovely town on the border of Warwickshire and Worcestershire. But, you know...
That Jackie Smith's constituency, wasn't it?
It was, absolutely, you're absolutely right, yeah. But, you know, when there's a big job on and a riot or something like that, you'd get into town, all that kind of stuff, and then you'd stay in town. And we used to go to this club called the Rum Runner.
Oh, yeah.
And that was at Four Ways, I think, in Birmingham city centre. And we're in there one night, and all of a sudden, you know, there's music going on, and we looked up on the stage, and there's a group there, and it was Duran Duran.
Really?
That was the first place.
Well, are they from there, then?
They're from Birmingham, yeah. Well, I didn't know they were from Birmingham, actually, years later and all that, and I didn't think they were Brummies or anything like that, you know. But that is where they started, the Rum Runner in Birmingham.
All right.
And when I saw the way they had turned into, what did they call people from that era?
New Romantics.
New Romantics, that's it. And they all had, like, that John Taylor had, hair. Big hair, all that kind of stuff. You're absolutely right. And there was another boy called Nick Rhodes.
Nick Rhodes, yeah.
That's right. And he looked exotic. He looked like... Well, he looked like a woman, actually. You know, he was sort of...
Well, that was the whole thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
They
the
were supposed to be
android
sort of
type thing, was it called?
Androgynous.
Androgynous,
Yeah,
that's
that's
right.
it.
Yeah. And all this. And when I looked at them, I thought, no, that can't be the same people that I saw that night in the Rum Runner, because...
Does they not look like that, then?
Well, because they'd come off stage. You know, the stage was only as far away from you as I am from you. You know what I mean? And you'd just be standing there or dancing or having a drink and all that. And then when they finished doing a couple of, numbers that, would take off to somebody else's songs, they'd just come off the stage, have a few beers and all that. And then, of course, years later, you see this enormously famous group around the world and you realise it was them. But didn't you do one of their concerts
Super
once?
groups. Yeah, well, funnily enough, it's not a band I would have expected to go and see, but
No.
it was when I was in New York. I think you'd already gone back to England at this point, but we used to have a mutual friend called Pete Rudge.
Peter Rudge was the Rolling Stones road manager.
Well, he used to be known as, because we had a photographer mate of ours, Mickey Brennan, who would always introduce him to people because he was so impressed that he knew this guy who was the Rolling Stones road manager.
That's right, yeah.
And he used to always introduce him as, oh, hi, this is Pete, who used to manage the Rolling Stones Rudge, just to make the point that, this was a really, really interesting guy that you should get to know.
Yeah.
And so he became known as Pete, who used to manage the Rolling Stones Rudge. And that was what we always talked to him about.
Right,
but he had a terrible time doing that because you might remember this. At one point or other, there was an issue with tax that wasn't paid in the US on some particular Rolling Stones tour, and I can't remember which one it was, whether it was, but it would have been, a long time ago. It would have been the Black and Blue tour or the Some Girls tour or something like that, back in the sort of late 70s, early 80s. It turned out that the tax authorities in America came after the organisers of the tour, and basically Jagger and the rest of them kind of distanced themselves from Pete Rudge, and he ended up getting done, and he had to pay £1 million to the US tax authorities, and he had it. He actually had £1 million in cash to pay them.
Where did he get it from?
Because he'd made it on the tour. I mean, they were all making £1 million a night.
Yeah, I see.
But he, as the road manager, was making probably a few million every time they did a tour.
Yeah.
But after that, they because they audited him, they said you cannot even write a cheque without having it countersigned by a member of the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. So he basically had no money for years and years and years, and he occasionally...
But he lived in that great apartment, didn't he?
Well, he had the apartment which he paid for with cash as well. I mean, you can imagine in those days it was still a bit like the Wild West rock and roll. You would go and do these tours, and everything was in cash, and there was big suitcases full of money being handed over and all that.
Led Zeppelin insisted on being paid in cash at every concert on American tour. They put it into what they called the coffin, and it was like the Holy Grail. They carried it around on two sticks, and somebody nicked it in one of the concerts.
Well, this guy Rudge used to come into Costello's quite a lot.
Yeah, Rudyard, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And we came in there one night and we were chatting away, and we hadn't seen him for a while. And he said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I've become the road manager of Duran Duran." And I was like, "Oh, really?" He said, "In fact, they're playing up at I can't remember where it was, Electric Ladyland or somewhere."
Yeah.
That night, do you want to go and see
Radio
him?
City?
Yeah, somewhere like that. And I was like, well, it was actually because it was kind of like it was a relaunch of their kind of. It was after they'd been massive,
right?
So it was quite a small venue.
Yeah.
And he said, "Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Well, I had nothing better to do," so I went and actually watched them. They were actually very good, but they had some very strange special effects. But the whole place was full of teenage girls, kind of literally fainting and being carried out, just like the Beatles in the early 60s. No, not because I was there. In fact, I was approached by one particular young woman who asked me if I would be able to get her backstage. I had all these passes and things on me, and it was a slightly embarrassing scene because I mean I wasn't really interested in teenage girls.
Did this young lady offer you a favour if you could get her backstage?
She did, and I said, "Look, I think you're a bit young for all that," and I just gave her a couple of passes, because that's the kind of guy I am.
I see.
And I didn't hang around.
Just the generosity of your heart.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't hang around for the.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that, Michael.
Just to show you that my moral compass is not entirely disappeared.
You didn't get sucked in. I was going home once from America for some unknown reason. I don't know, what particular trip it was. And Rudgy was on the same flight. And I got him bumped up into business that I was in because he was down the plane a bit, But it was one of those weird flights.
Well, the IRS wouldn't allow him to sign a cheque. It was too expensive.
I don't know, but it was one of those weird flights which you get occasionally across the Atlantic where half the plane was empty. I don't know why, but
that used to happen a lot because they used to run about 3 times as many flights then as they do now.
They did, and there were about 6 different airlines crossing the Atlantic. So I got on the plane and then
now they're always full. I mean, you can't get an empty plane.
But anyway, and a lot of people, including Rupert Murdoch, used to book 4 seats in the aisle across the middle of a jumbo, and then just put all the armrests up and then use it as a bed.
Right.
And I
just in coach, you mean? Coach
in coach class, because you didn't get 4 seats next to each other in business or further, so they'll just do that. And that's what Roger had done, and we bumped into each other because I'd sort of gone to the bar, near the door entrance, and he'd come to one of the loos there. So I said, "Roger, what are you doing?" So anyway, we were regularly.
You show a massive influence.
Well, we were regularly crossing the Atlantic, and we had hundreds of thousands of air miles and all that kind of stuff. And I said, "Well, take it out of my air miles, I want my mate to say, oh yeah, okay." So they sorted it out, and we had a very, very pleasant trip.
He was a fascinating guy. He had some very, very interesting stories about Keith Richards and Mick Jagger.
He did, yeah.
But more of those coming, I suppose, later on. Can't always give too many secrets away.
No,
Let me ask you this, because there's an interesting piece on the back page. You'll know this story anyway. Back page of the Daily Mail this morning. Goodison Star's gift to the jobless. All about Stephen Naismith.
Isn't it a good story? Isn't it a nice story?
It is a nice story
about footballers.
It says that basically he's going to supply tickets to the unemployed.
Yeah, I know. It's wonderful. And he's done this before, because he was at Rangers and he did exactly the same thing. Let me read a bit of this to you. Everton striker Stephen Naismith has bought tickets for home games to donate to the unemployed on Merseyside. 27-year-old forward who arrived at Goodison Park from Rangers in 2012 said, "I come from Ayrshire in the west of Scotland and spent a lot of my life in Glasgow, a city that at times has suffered from high unemployment. Liverpool has a similar history, and I'm aware that through no fault of their own, there are many unemployed in Liverpool trying hard to find a job and may not be able to afford a ticket. I thought it might be a small gesture." He's also pointed out to somebody who I spoke to earlier on that they don't have to be Everton fans. So if he can help, he will. And
the reason I think we should highlight this is because we do, and I'm probably as guilty of it as anybody. We do talk sometimes on this station, and we read stories about all the time. Footballers who are making loads and loads of money, and why don't they give something back? An awful lot of them do give something back without us actually knowing about it.
I mean, to be honest, it is a hidden agenda which is largely ignored. For instance, after England's dismal performance in the World Cup just gone, somebody writes to a newspaper and says, "I think the England players should hand back their match fees for all the qualifying games as well as the 3 games in."
And all their match fees go to charity anyway.
And have done for the last 6 or 7 years. They don't take any match fees.
Is that partly because the match fee is not a huge amount of money to them as well?
It's not huge. I think it's a couple of grand. Yeah. To be honest, I think it's considering.
It's more than most people would get for 90 minutes.
Well, of course it is, but it's probably more. It's probably £5 now, something like that. It used to be £200 or £300 in the sort of 70s and things like that. And all that's put into a pool, which all goes to charity, and they've been doing that for years and years and years. So, it's not like they're grasping. And the other thing is, you take people like, Craig Bellamy's the one I always use as an example. Craig Bellamy has spent millions of pounds of his own money setting up a you know, a foundation,
a charity in Africa.
In
right?
Africa to help kids. Rio Ferdinand's done the same thing. Didier Drogba spent literally millions of pounds of his own money.
Emmanuel Adebayor, I think, has one as well, doesn't he?
Who?
Adebayor, I think. Has one as well.
Adebayor does, I think he does, yeah. And
the guy that scored that goal against Everton when we went to Spurs that day.
Really?
Just thought I'd remind you, in case you've forgotten who he is, you know. Obviously, you didn't understand my pronunciation.
No, I didn't say. I know he is. But anyway, the point is, you're absolutely right. There is a streak of generosity within football. I mean, for instance, a mate of mine who's a footballer for a Premier League team in London. Well, I say mate of mine, I mean a guy I know well because I've done some media work with him, and a former player at the club from many years ago, from the 70s, suffering shocking hip and knee problems these days. He just paid for all the operations. 2 new knees, 2 new hips, you know, no problem, send me the bill. And they do an awful lot of that sort of stuff on the side, which does go unremarked.
And when you talk about the amount of money they make, I mean, there's an interesting story here that's been talked about. I mean, you probably may not be familiar with this show, The Big Bang Theory. Have you ever seen that show? It's a US sort of sitcom show.
No.
Very popular with people.
I don't get on with American sitcoms. I've never watched an episode of Cheers.
You never watched Seinfeld?
No.
Cheers is ancient history now. What about Seinfeld?
Seinfeld, no. Cheers,
what about
no.
Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I like that.
Do you?
I like that.
What about Friends?
Friends, never watched. Well, I like Jennifer. Is that Jennifer Aniston?
Who doesn't like Jennifer Aniston?
Exactly. And I think she's very cute in it. But I just don't get the American sitcom humour type thing. I certainly didn't get Cheers. That was in a pub, wasn't it, in Boston?
It was.
Because their pubs aren't like our pubs.
Actually.
Oh, have you? Yeah, their pubs aren't like our pubs, are they?
No, they're not.
No.
They're much more entertaining. They're always filming things in them. These guys, 3 of them who are in the Big Bang Theory, were asking for £600,000 each per episode.
Is this an American show?
Yeah.
So that's $1 million an episode?
Yeah.
They wanted each?
Yeah.
And did they get it?
They did.
That's astonishing.
But isn't it amazing that nobody criticises them? I mean, when Friends, I think, were doing their final series, I think they were all getting something like £1 million per episode as well.
Remember that picture of me and J.R. Ewing?
Larry Hagman, the one where you're standing behind him.
Well, no, I'm standing with him.
In a kind of big group of people.
Standing with him, right.
He's kind of walking through a crowd, and you appear to be stalking him.
On that same trip, right, he went to Coronation Street, because that was our biggest programme here. I think it still is. Well, Coronation Street or EastEnders.
Yeah.
So he goes up there, and I remember the conversation he had with someone like Ken Barlow or somebody, you know. Not saying it was Ken Barlow, but it was... and
one of the big stars of the show, yeah.
And, you know, and Joe Ewing said, and how do you guys get on here with the dollars? And Ken Barlow said something like, oh, it's not bad, you know, we get about 80 grand. 80 grand, yeah, that's not bad. And J.R. Ewing thought he was talking about per show.
Per show, yeah.
In fact, that was their annual salary.
I know. That's incredible. Absolutely amazing. But what I was going to say was, the point is that with, you know, pop stars, rock stars, and people like these guys, these actors, getting, you know, £1 million an episode, nobody's going, you know, that's just outrageous, you know, which is what they tend to say about football as well.
Of course they do.
Only the market price, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.